Welcome to A Champion's Journey podcast. I'm Matt Davidson. From an early age, I've had the privilege of learning from world champions and world-class performers, and I've always been fascinated by what drives them to the pinnacle of achievement. In this podcast, I'll interview high performers to learn more about the habits, rituals, tactics, and strategies which have aided them throughout the course of their journeys so that we can take those lessons and apply them to ours. The mission of A Champion's Journey podcast is to interview not only those who have stood on the top podium in arenas of high-level competition, but to learn from those who have conquered life's greatest challenges and have dared to live life on their own terms. All right, I'm finally able to sit down and have a conversation with a multi-talented Christopher Acevedo, otherwise known as Ace. I'm glad we're finally able to sit down and do this, brother. We've been talking about doing it for a long time, trying to sync up our schedules and make it happen. So appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Especially with the long list of people that you've been talking to, it's a pretty big honor to be here.
Oh, thanks. Well, you're definitely an interesting character, man. You've been one of my closest friends, and we've been on former teammates together on the Golden Knights for several years, and it's great we're finally able to do this. But I'd like to start out with talking a bit about your background prior to joining the military. Mm-hmm. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like, and what influenced your decision to ultimately join the military?
Well, I originally was born in San Angelo, Texas, and I ended up moving in, living with my grandfather about the age 6, and they took us over to Arizona. And so pretty much from the time that I started going to school, I was basically hitting school after school after school. My grandfather was a trucker, and so I was kind of all over the place. Ultimately, it brought me back to San Angelo, Texas, and then to Fort Worth. And that's where I would end up graduating from high school and then joining the military, which is why I claim Fort Worth. As far as what inspired me to join the military, my grandfather was a paratrooper for the 101st Airborne Division. And so because of that, it's actually a funny story. When I was going to join the military, initially I was going to join the Air Force. I wanted to be a pilot so bad. And the recruiters were kind of like, well, what kind of grades do you make? And I was like, well, I'm a B, C student, and, used to be an A, B student once upon a time. 6th grade came, and, then you start liking girls and everything else. And so, yeah. And so, yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm a BC student. And they were like, yeah, that's not going to cut it for a pilot, man. You got to get those grades up. And I think they were trying to tell me to get my grades up. But at the time, I just thought it was a put down. So I went kind of wandering off.
Like, what did they know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was moping. And it was interesting as I walked around the corner, the Marines, everybody's trying to bite because it was all the DOD was there and recruiters. And the Marines tried to hit me up. They're like, dude, yeah, uniform and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, man, maybe I could be a Marine. The Air Force doesn't want me. And as I rounded the corner, this Army sergeant, I can't remember her name, and it drives me nuts. But yeah, she was like, hey, what's the matter? And I was like, I wanted to be a pilot. I really wanted to join the Air Force. And she was like, really? And she was like, well, the Army has pilots. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah. And then slowly but surely she pulled me in. And then off a whim, I ended up going with my first ex-wife's uncle, who was a 19 Delta. And he took me out to Fort Hood, and he let me go watch them do their thing on the tank range and
nice.
Bradleys and everything else. And I was like, this is rad. Like, I want to sit in the back of a Bradley and, go shoot stuff. And so, yeah, I went from wanting to be a pilot to now I'm on top of a truck and, in the Army. And yeah, that's how I ended up joining the Army. And yeah, it was pretty crazy with that whole entry into the Army. I am a 2nd generation paratrooper. My grandfather was a paratrooper, and my uncle was also a tanker. And so I come from a line of people that were in the Army. So I think they were pretty proud of me.
That's awesome. Did you have a close relationship with your grandfather?
I did. Him and my uncle were basically the ones that showed me how to be the man I am today.
Nice.
And so yeah, they're a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I guess we can talk about your early military career. You've done a number of things, from being a cab scout to a gunner, a gunner on a tow missile launcher truck in Iraq for 15 months.
Yep.
And you've done a tour in Korea, went to Air Assault School, Rappel Master course, and you went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection. I wasn't aware that
Most
you've
people
done that. But I would like to talk about each one of those things, wherever you want to start with your military career.
Okay, yeah. Joining the Army in 1999, like I said, I was hanging out with my first ex-wife's uncle, and he was actually in the National Guard. So that was funny because he was like, hey, yeah, we're gonna do this, and I'm like, yeah, cool. And I didn't understand all the inner workings. So talking to that recruiter, she was regular Army, and she kind of pulled me in. I signed the contract. The next thing you know, I was raising my hand and going to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Oh,
and
did you not know that you were going to be doing that?
Yeah, I had no clue that I was just going into regular Army. I thought I could just go to basic training and then go to National Guard. So kids,
at what point did you figure that out?
When I went and talked to her uncle again, and he told me, he's like, yeah, let's go talk to a recruiter. I was like, dude, it's all unlocked, man. I'm going to basic training. I'm doing this. And he was like, yeah, no. I'm like, that's not it. You're going the wrong way, man. Like, you want to be in the National Guard. And I was like, okay, yeah, I want to be in the National Guard. And their recruiter was like, hey, maybe you just don't go and we sign you up over here and you go that way. And I was like, yeah, I don't like the thought of jail. So I'm just going to go do what they say. And, maybe we can revisit this in like 4 years when my contract is up.
Right.
And, but yeah, so I ended up in the regular Army, and I was on a tow missile launcher truck, which is actually how I ended up getting my name. Nobody knew how to pronounce my last name, which is Acevedo, or Acevedo for those that don't know how to, I guess, smooth out their D's. And, it was, everybody was like calling me everything from alphabet to avocado, all these crazy names. And I'm sure people are going to call me that, if they hear me now. But yeah, it was interesting because the privates were always wanting to call me Ace. And as a kid, I remember a teacher in the 4th grade asking me, or asking the class what our nicknames were, if we had any. And I was like, man, that would be a cool time to like give myself a nickname. And I was like, maybe Ace would work. And I just didn't have the courage, I guess, to give myself the name. I was like, I really want to earn a name. Like, I don't want to just be given this name. And
they have a better story too when someone else gives it to you. And yeah, for sure.
All right. And so the privates that I was working with, they were all like, yeah, your name's Ace. And I was like, cool. We don't know how to say your last name. Ace works. It's easy. And I was like, all right. And so it was just the privates. So all the lower enlisted were calling me that. And then the NCOs were like, hey, we're not going to call you that. You're a gunner on a truck, on a tow missile launcher truck at that. And if you don't know what TOW stands for, it's tube launched optically tracked wire guided missile. And so that's basically what I worked with. And when I got to my first unit, that's what I was initially, was a gunner.
What does that mean in layman's terms for the TOW?
Basically what it is you have to fire, you push a button, it fires a missile. That missile comes out of the tube and it's guided by wires. So you have to keep your reticle or your crosshairs on the target until it makes contact and destroys the tank. And so tube launched optically tracked wire guided missile. And
mouthful.
Yeah, it is. I used to say it all the time. But yeah, the sergeants were like, "No, you're not going to have that name. You can't be called Ace until you go to gunnery and prove yourself." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, and I get it. And so once again, the name started rolling around again about what I was going to be. And then I went to my first gunnery and shot Top Gun, and they were like, "Well, there it is. You're
that's
Ace."
Awesome.
And so, yeah, that's how I ended up getting my name.
I didn't know that story. That's awesome. Yeah, nice. So it adds another element to it, another layer to the name. That's cool.
Yeah. Usually people are asked, or they're like, where did Ace come from? And like, normally whatever's going on, I'm like, I don't want to take up too much of anybody's time. So I usually just lay it out with, it's the first 3 letters of my name. So that's just what it is.
Gotcha. If you could paint for us a picture, like a detailed picture of your experience in Iraq as a gunner.
Wow. So we got there, we crossed the Iraqi border the day that they had officially called to the end of the war. And so I remember going in, and we were in Kuwait for like 2 weeks.
And this would have been what time?
This was 2000. This was 2003.
Okay.
So we got the word that they had gone in, and they were like, "You guys are following in these guys." And gosh, I don't want to misspeak, but I believe it was 3rd ID that was ahead of us. And so we came in to I guess, take over for them. And So we had to do some left seat, right seat rides with them. We went all the way into Baghdad, and we were like in some blown out building in Sector 14J or whatever it was that we were in. And we were just trying to calm everything down because everybody was pretty riled up. And for the most part, it was pretty nice. There were some awesome moments and sad moments, and some at the same time. There was I remember doing guard in this blown out building, and there was a street light, and the orphans that were there, they would come and hang out next to the guard post because they knew nobody would bully them. And they would literally just be sleeping out in the median on this thing. And so we'd watch over them, and then they'd go on about their day and do whatever they did. And then, at night they'd come back and we'd see them. We're like, hey, and they'd, come find their little spot, and I'll go to sleep and be like, cool. And we're just standing there. We'd watch them. And so it was from that, we moved into what would become the green zone, before it was ever the green zone. And, so there was a lot of cleaning up and stuff that was going on during that time. And then, just pretty much running around trying to keep people from doing dumb stuff with weapons and everything. You've got this country that doesn't have much of any laws going on at the time, and we're trying to put everything back together. And it was interesting. A lot of the people really wanted us there. I remember I was hugged by a one-armed man, and he was literally crying because we were there. Wow. And he didn't have a tongue, and he was sitting there trying to talk to me, and of course he's speaking to me in whatever Arabic, and I didn't understand what he was saying. And his dad's just like, he's just really glad you're here. And this man is like one arm sobbing, hugging me. And I was like, man, like that kind of hits you a little bit deep.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that made a huge impression on me. And I was like, well, I kind of feel like we're here for the right reasons. Like if these people feel this way, then, why shouldn't we be here? Yeah. And like, I wasn't one of the guys that wanted to go get into the fight or anything. I just wanted to try to help take care of people. And, we were there we were supposed to be there initially for 12 months. And then, unfortunately, Black Sunday happened. And I don't know if you're aware of what that is. Basically, first cav was over in Solder City, and they ended up getting attacked. We were doing a transition at that time. We were supposed to be leaving, and it was actually, we were 24 hours from heading to Kuwait to go home, and Black Sunday happened. And they ended up losing, I believe it was a tank and a truck there, and a few people. And it was really unfortunate. And so, yeah.
So you guys just stayed back to make sure everything was stabilized before you
pretty
transitioned
much
out, just to, in case they needed any extra help.
Right. And then that's when the rise of Mahdi Army started, and which was led by Solder. And so we basically went toe to toe with those guys. And it was a pretty interesting 3 months of driving around this country that we had already been driving around, but it's like, it seemed to change overnight from everybody being cool and, we're working things out to all of a sudden now we're fighting with this group of people. And from what I read on the internet now, I think they believed we were trying to stop the coming of God, essentially, or Allah. But that's what I've been reading on the internet since I left. And that was, over 20 years ago. And so, it was a pretty interesting leaving that place as things were going on.
Did you find yourself in any combat situation, where you're trading fire while you're over there?
Oh yeah. I also found out, then I going through basic training, I realized that anytime I would get nervous or scared, I would start to kind of laugh, which is like, I smile. And so usually that's because I'm nervous. And so if I'm laughing, then that means I'm probably really nervous. And
well, you're always a positive person in general, so it's hard to distinguish that sometimes. I think from the outside, people on the outside looking in.
Right. And yeah, it was, I remember there was one time we'd gotten into some stuff, and like there's bullets going everywhere, and I was kneeling down next to my truck commander, and I just started laughing, and he looks at me, he's like, "What's the matter with you?" And I was like, I just can't believe we're doing this right now. Like, this is nuts.
It's always interesting to me what, because I've never, aside from when I was over there, I had, I was in the middle of a few rocket attacks, which a lot of people, is relatively common over there, but never, exchanged any fire. So I've always wondered how would I step up to the plate in that kind of a situation? Did you have any kind of questions like that going into that with you? And did you surprise yourself? Like, what was that like for you?
It was, I don't, it's nothing that I wanted to do. In fact, going over there, I thought that we were severely undertrained. And so I was kind of nervous about it. I was like, man, can we handle this? And I was honestly pleasantly surprised. Take, for instance, we were going into Al Kut. They had killed an American there. And the city had been taken over by a Mahdi army. And so they were like, hey, you guys got to go in. And I was like, bro, like you got these Ukrainians here with these armored vehicles. And they were like, yeah, you guys go. And we had thin skin Humvees still then. And they were like, yeah, you guys go in. And it was, we were there for 3 or 4 days. And it was just fighting off and on. And, it was pretty interesting. We had to go take over a TV station because that's where they were relaying all their information. And when that whole thing ended, I was like, dude, we were totally prepared. Like I was confident as we went through, but there was definitely some moments where I was just like, I remember this in training and it didn't go so well for me, but that's just the way that the training had gone. And we had to do a movement to contact, where basically you're driving through an area that that enemy might be, and you're going to get shot at. And I remember training in Fort Polk, Louisiana, what was then Fort Polk. I don't even know what it's called now. But yeah, we were driving through, and I was a lead truck in the training scenario, and I was the first one to get hit. They're like, yeah, boom, you're dead. And I was like, oh no. And so there I was in Iraq, and they're like, yeah, we're doing movement to contact. And I'm the lead truck again. And I'm like, oh no.
Didn't go so well the last time.
Yeah.
See how it works this time. Well, that's good. I'm glad everything worked out there. And it's, so it was a situation where, everyone performed well on your team or in your unit. And like it, just with the training kicks in and everything kind of becomes automatic. Was it that kind of feeling like you get into a flow state and you just, what to do, and it's you guys are pointing in the right direction. It's time to cut loose. Yep,
and everybody's talking. The communication is on point, and it's crazy because you run those drills over and over again, and you're like, dude, why are we on the radio all the time? Like, why do I have to talk this way? And it's like, it's crazy when it starts happening and everything just starts clicking, and you actually see it happen in real time in a real world situation, and you're just like, there it is. Like that's why we do that. And like, I don't like talking on the radio, right. But when it was happening, it was just like, yo. And
was there fear for you at the time, or did you just kick into high gear and like, we've got a job to do and you're fully focused on that? Or did you have some fear?
There was for sure fear. When we were going into cut, I was just like, dude, I'm the lead truck. Like, and I'm like, I was sitting there and I was obviously pumping my leg, and my trunk commander was like, hey man, it's going to be okay. And they were like, yeah, F-16 is going to fly in, drop a JDAM, and then you guys go. And something blew up in the town, and I thought that was a JDAM. I thought I was going to wet my pants because I was like, dude, here we go, man. And my leg was obviously shaking. My truck commander grabbed my leg. He's like, hey, man, it's all right, dude. It's going to be okay. And I'm like, all right, okay. And then we got in there and we saw some people, and, you make sure that your targets are who they are. And we just kept on pushing through and made it to the objective and started taking back stuff.
Man, I can only imagine. It was a pretty mature theory of operations by the time that I was over there in 2009. Some of us deployed from the team just for a few months to take over for some of the SF guys and others that, needed to come back home and spend some time with their families over Christmas. But I remember at one point they had enough confidence in us to let a few of us go on a personal security detail for one of the generals that we were working with. So we were driving out with in an up-armored Suburban, and then we had two vehicles, two Humvees with the turrets and, guys in the Top Guns going outside the wire. But I remember the briefing that the Navy SEAL commander gave us. He was like, hey, if you see something, say something. essentially, if something goes down and you guys have to draw your weapons, he was like, it's going to be a bad day. We're probably done at that point. So, but I remember he said, if you see something, say something. And as we drove out of our compound, I remember seeing a couple locals just sitting Indian style facing each other in the middle of the median of the highway. Nobody else around for, and I was like, should I say something? What's going on there? But yeah, it was an interesting experience. And I had a really good time. But I guess what I'm saying is, and the point I'm trying to make is that, man, I can only imagine what it was like when it was, early in the days of activity over there, and how sketchy and how scary that would be, especially if you're driving around an unarmored Humvee.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember them telling us, put the sandbags on the bottom of the floor so that you have something to protect yourself, and, maybe put stuff against the doors so that, you have just a little bit more protection than that.
Don't get your balls blown up.
Right. Yeah. Essentially. Yeah. Fortunately, I was standing on a plate. So I don't know how much protection that would have given me, but it made me feel a little bit more confident standing in that turret.
What was one of the low lights for you over there?
Gosh. I think watching kids like just run, like when stuff would happen, or hearing kids crying and stuff. And I'm like, dude, that sucks. Like, nobody wants to hear that. And not because it's annoying or anything, but just like, they don't deserve that. And, it's a part of the way that things are sometimes. And, there was also times where there was people that we couldn't help. I remember there was a gentleman who I don't know how he got hurt, but we saw him laying on the side of the road, and his arm was pretty badly beaten up, mangled. And we were trying to help him, and he didn't really want the help. He was, I don't know what he was trying to do, but we ended up seeing him later on. And, the medic was like, yeah, we can't do anything for him. And I'm not sure what he had going on or what, but it ended up not being good. I don't know what ended up happening to him. He wasn't there the next day. And so I don't know. It was, just a lot of stuff like that is, one of my favorite things to hear in the world is children, especially babies, laughing. It just makes me crack up, and I just lose my mind. And my girlfriend all the time, she's always sending me videos of stuff like that, and I am just rolling. And I know it probably makes her laugh to hear me laugh from the other room after she sent me something like that. And so that and donkeys eowing. Yeah, I love that noise too.
Yeah, for me, it's like goats or sheep, dude. What about some highlights? And and what did you take away from the experience that you learned about yourself?
Highlights would be that I got a task to lead a convoy across Iraq. I want to say I was either going to Taji or Tikrit. I can't remember, but yeah, doing that convoy, and it was uneventful. We ran out, did whatever the people that we needed to do, escorting them, because that's what I was doing in Iraq at the time, was escorting these people from the palace in Baghdad out into Iraq to go, take care of whatever they needed to take care of. They had the ministry of, or all these ministries, which are like our departments. So like your Department of Health and stuff like that. And so we were escorting them out to make sure that they made it to the places that they needed to be to help with whatever was going on in that area, and then making sure that they made it back to Baghdad. And so, yeah, and there was all kinds of stuff going on the roads. You have your IEDs and stuff like that, and you got your bad people in places that want to do bad things to the people that are trying to grow this country. And so, yeah, that was a pretty big honor. And for them to actually trust me at the time, I was, what was I? 21, wow. Freaking kid, and here I am leading these 4 trucks across the desert, plus whatever kind of vehicle that they had in between us, to get to a place, make sure that they were good, and then bring them back safe.
It's a lot of responsibility. Were you responsible for doing some of the planning beforehand as well?
Absolutely. The route, everything. And so, fortunately, I had great NCOs that were with me. And so they were there, they were helping me along. And of course, you always have somebody on the radio and a QRF that's ready to go just in case something happens. And if you don't don't know what a QRF is, gosh, I hate it when that happens. A quick reaction force. There you go. Thanks. It like the acronyms come and then it's like, wait, what did that mean again?
Yeah,
like
if you haven't used them in a while, sometimes. Yeah.
But yeah, our QRF was on standby, and I was QRF a couple times, and yeah, I think I like being QRF more than I like being the target.
Right. Yeah, I'll bet. Because then you still have the element of surprise to some degree, I would imagine.
Right.
What can you talk about the situation that you're QRF for? One that comes to mind?
Gosh, there was one time that it was basically a scare, and we showed up and basically just looked out. I'm not sure what it was that we were looking for, but they were like, yeah, there's this thing going on here. And, and basically it stopped the convoy from moving, and we had to go out and just check it out. And basically we showed up, walked around a little bit, made sure that our guys were good, and then came back. And
but you didn't have any contact on any of those?
Not really, no.
Always a good thing.
Yeah.
You also had a tour in Korea. Can you tell us something about that?
Goodness. Korea. So at that point I had switched over to air defense artillery. I was an early warning systems operator at that time, which was a 14 Juliet. And it ended up transferring to being a 14 Golf while I was on the Golden Knights. But either way, it's basically the brains of the air defense system. And so you're basically relaying information all over to, your people, your button pushers, essentially, that fire the stuff that make sure everything's good. And then you're also relaying reports to headquarters and working with satellites. After I got back from Iraq, I'd realized that I couldn't get out of the Army, and that's what I wanted to do essentially, was get out of the Army. And I realized I couldn't do anything being a scout at the time. I'm not sure what it qualifies them for now. But there
are no transferable skills to the civilian sector.
Right. Not for anything that I wanted to do.
Okay.
They basically said I could go be like a security guard, or I could go drive buses or whatever with what I had learned so far. And some other stuff I can't remember, but like it transfers in some ways, but like I said, nothing that I wanted to do. And I really wanted like a tech job to help me attain some other stuff.
Right.
I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got out of the Army. I just know I'd done my time and it was time for me to go. And then they were like, yeah, these are your options. And I was like, cool, let me get a tech job and then I'll have more options. And so that's when I took over, or decided to take air defense artillery. And then as soon as I finished AIT, or advanced individual training, in Fort Bliss, I went, they almost immediately, like a month after that, I got sent to Korea. And they ended up sending us to Gwangju, which is at the southern end of the peninsula, not on the border. And it was pretty interesting being down there. Gwangju is the second largest city in Korea, and unlike Seoul, where there's a bunch of blacklisted areas, and if you don't know what a blacklisted area is, basically it's the Army has deemed that place not okay for soldiers to be at. And so like in different parts of in different parts of Korea, there are places that soldiers shouldn't go. And so the Army's like, hey, just so you know, this place is blacklisted, don't go there. It's like, okay. In Gwangju, there were no blacklisted areas, and it's the second largest city in Korea. And so yeah, and it's a beautiful city. It's gorgeous. And so we went around, we explored, and then, we did our job that we were supposed to be doing there, which is guarding the southern end of the peninsula. And, it was pretty quiet, lived pretty much a normal life. There was an alleyway we used to visit, and it had restaurants and bars, and that's where I actually started doing karaoke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my soldiers were like, "Hey, man, like, hey, Sergeant, you wanna go sing karaoke?" And I think they were joking with me. And as I was growing up, I was in the band, and I realized I didn't want to do band anymore, but I had to figure some other kind of thing to do. And they were like, "Yeah, you can do choir." And I was like, sure, I'll give singing a try. And I figured I'd go in there and, just lip sync the whole way through. And it turns out I really like singing.
You're really good at it too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And, I hadn't sang since I left high school. And so that was 4 years of not singing, or, singing at the steering wheel.
Right.
And so when they were like, yeah, you want to come sing? And I was like, yeah. And I think they were all kind of like, oh, we were just kidding. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to go out there and give it a shot.
And you started belting some stuff out. What was their reaction like?
Oh yeah. So it was funny. I was like, well, what should I sing? And they were like, they were all kind of kidding with each other, and they're like, do Creep. And I was like, Creep. And I was like, okay, I guess I could do that. And I didn't even know who the band was at the time, but yeah, I was like, okay, cool. Do some Radiohead. Here we go. And I got up there and sang, and everybody was screaming the whole time. I was like, dude, that felt good, man. I like that. Like, I think I could do that a little bit more often. And so, yeah, karaoke became the thing. That's kind of what spurred everything else.
Nice. Yeah, I remember when Jen, when we heard you sing we'd heard you sing before, I think, but we were in trying to remember the name of the bar, but it was over by Methodist College. And I think you were singing up there. It was upstairs, and Ike was there. And I think you were singing something from the Black Crows. And I remember looking over and seeing Jen, and she was just like, oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, she was, we were both like in awe of how good your voice really was, man.
Thanks.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit. I forgot to ask you a question about what was your transition like once you got back from Iraq for 15 months? Like I know, a lot of veterans experience PTSD, and, when I came back, I was surprised because there was a slight, adjustment for me too, even though I wasn't over there very long. And the way that I kind of realized that I think once I'd gotten back, we started business as usual on the Golden Knights. And, I think we were in California or somewhere for a training camp. While we were over there, we were doing a discussion, like a high school presentation. And I remember we were in the cafeteria, and someone pulled out a chair on the linoleum floor, and it rattled like I had an experience when I was over there where I was working out with the firefighters New Year's Eve. And the fire station on Baghdad International Airport was right next to like a phalanx gun that they have for the security systems to intercept rockets or mortars that are coming in. Well, we had a mortar and rocket attack that came in, and they fired several rounds in there. And the phalanx was actually the first time it was reported that a phalanx had a successful intercept. But
oh, wow.
When that thing ripped off, it felt like it was right over our heads, and you could hear like the shells hitting on the corrugated metal roofing of the fire station there. But I guess just that sound of the phalanx going off, and how it was just made you, everybody like hunker down and cringe. And then once we figured out what was going on, we saw some of the rounds hitting the palm trees and exploding, and cars driving into ditches and stuff. And, we ran into the bunker, but, so that was very slight for me, but it was just that. So I was just wondering if there was anything like that for you that you experienced.
Well, gosh, so being a gunner, you're up on top of the truck. And, one of the big threats was, people over bridges, worrying about people dropping stuff in front of you or on top of you. And also like trash. I'm sure, as you're aware, they have trash out there on the roads, and sometimes they put the improvised explosive devices in those, or IEDs. And so, yeah, that was a kind of a big thing when I came back was, you'd be driving down the road and there's like somebody left a cup or whatever out on the road, right. And trying to get out of the way of it. And it's like, more than likely there's a 99.9% chance there's not going to be anything in there in the United States. And so, yeah, or actually I guess 100% since I don't believe it's happened, but, right. But yeah. Yeah, that was one of the big things. And then, yeah, watching out looking at bridges, be driving under them, and just like you're kind of in your car, just like slinking down, trying to see as much as you could, because on the top of the truck, you can see everything. And in the driver's seat, you can't see anything. So I like coming back and then driving and then being in that position, you're just like, dude, you're left at the mercy of whatever might be happening up there and hoping that your gunner sees it.
Right.
And I was that guy hoping to see it. And so, yeah.
Man. Yeah. It's that kind of stuff can, have unexpected, effects on your psyche that you really don't realize until times like that. Was that the worst of it, or did you have anything else?
I had some sleepwalking episodes, and so yeah. Yeah, it got a little bit to the point where I needed to sleep in another room because it was getting kind of bad. But fortunately, through working stuff out, like I was able to sort myself out. It took years, but yeah, I haven't. There was times even on the Golden Knights where I would sleepwalk just from like getting amped up about something that's going on. Next thing you know, I'd go to bed and wake up standing in the bathroom like, well. Cool. Here I am.
It was just a stress response. You think whenever you get stressed on the team or something like that, it would kind of manifest itself like that.
Yep.
Wow. That's crazy. But, anything else going on now? Like, do you find any residuals? Or are you all good to go?
No, gosh, I haven't slept walked since I got out of the Army. I have calmed down and, you know, there was a point where I realized that I needed to be honest about a lot of things. And so, and I realized that,
honest about your feelings about things, or what do you mean?
Right.
Okay.
Honest about the way that I felt. I'm a very, what's that word? Agreeable person. Mm-hmm. And so I like to be agreeable. I like for things to run smoothly and if I can avoid it, to have any confrontation at all. But if confrontation needs to be had, it needs to be had. And I think there was a part of me that was like, hey man, you got to say stuff. Like you have to be honest with these specific things. And, relationships is big. And so it was like, you know, the relationships that I had with people, if I wasn't speaking up, like my body was telling me, yeah, man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Huh. You got to say this stuff. And so, yeah. And I was like, cool. Well, now I know I need to be honest.
That's cool that you've arrived at the point where you are now with that. Did you have any help throughout the military? Any kind of like counseling or anything like that?
Initially when I came back, they had us all, you know, you go through all your debriefing and stuff when you come back from Iraq, and that requires going to see people and things like that. And so I did talk to some people, and they gave me some just some things to think about. There was a point where they were thinking medication would be the thing, and I was like, I really don't want to go down the medication route. I'd rather, you know, just try to figure it out. And so yeah, that's kind of the way it went. But from what I hear, things are getting a lot better as far as that is. Mental health in the military is actually sought after now, whereas back then it really wasn't a thing.
Right.
Like I think they saw it as a liability.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm glad, like, as I was getting out, to hear that there was a lot of soldiers that were going to therapy. And so
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's it has come a long way. And you know, I think it's just any time where an organization has to go through, you know, that level of hardship, you know, it's just good to know that some positive things have come out of it. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. I know that's, you know, that might be hard to talk about, but if anyone is out there listening that, you know, that might benefit them, you know, it's, I'm glad you shared that with us.
Oh yeah.
So we talked about your tour in Korea. Then you also went to Air Assault School and the Rappel Master course. How did you do in those courses, and did you find them challenging?
Well, they say that Air Assault School is supposed to be one of the hardest schools in the military. Whether that's true or not, I didn't attend all the military schools, so it may or may not have been. But it was. I had a great time doing it. At the time, I had just gotten in the Army. I wasn't even in the Army for. I think I'd just been in the Army for a little over, or maybe just under a year, and I was really good at running. When I got to my first unit, I found a battle buddy, and he was really good at running. And so that's what we did. And he was constantly beating me all the time. That guy was fast, Joe Guzman. And good old Chongo. And he just ripped that trail up. And I was back there eating his dust, just trying to catch up. And he pushed me and kept pushing me. And him and I were the fastest in the unit. And I
was about to say, now that you say that, I remember that doing some PT tests on the nights, you were usually one of the fastest guys.
Yeah. My command was like, hey man, you are pretty fast. We should send you, you're physically fit. We think you can go through this course. And I was like, dude, I joined the Army to do 4 years and get out. Like, I am not dangling underneath the helicopter. And there I was 2 weeks later dangling underneath the helicopter. And I was just, like, what am I doing?
Or like, what are you doing? Like, you were nervous about it, or like you were like,
I
this
was
is
terrified.
awesome, let's go.
No, I was terrified. I was like, because so as a kid, I was really shy, and like if 18-year-old me were to see me now, he'd be like, what in the world is that? You know, because I had no want to do any of it. But yeah, I guess they instilled confidence in me, and it was just little steps like that. It was like, oh yeah, you're going to aerosol school, and I was like, I don't really want to. And they were like, well, you're going to go because you're really good at PT. And I was like, okay. And so, and yeah, and it, like, you know, you have to focus hard and make sure you have all your ducks in a row, and you're doing, you know, these tests, and they're like, yeah, we're going to kick you out if you don't make it. And you have 3 tests to do, and you're just like, oh man. And then you have the ruck march at the end. And so it's just like the whole time you're like, study, you know, make sure you're, you know, staying hydrated because you're running everywhere. And, yeah, I was in one of the classes that actually didn't go through Fort Campbell. It was down in Fort Polk when they had a little air assault school down there. And so, yeah, in fact, gosh, a couple of days ago, I was looking through my closet, and I saw my Rappel Master shirts and stuff. And I was like, dude, man, those were good times. Yeah, I became a Rappel Master after that, after I'd made it through the course. And that's just another school where your attention to detail has to be on point, and you're just looking at everything.
Does that deal with a lot of the rigging as far as harnesses go, and like how to tie into, you know, certain things, redundant systems, things of that nature?
Correct. Yeah. You'd how to set up rappel lines on a tower, how to do it on a helicopter, or, you know, from a rock or whatever that you may have. And and then, you know, you're checking people. And so, yeah, if you hook somebody up wrong and then you watch them, you know, do a slide for life all the way down there, you know, you're just hoping that the stuff at the bottom is that they're going to live, especially when they're going off that tower. And yeah, we even did demonstrations at one point when I was in Fort Bliss. When I got sent over there, they're like, hey, you're a rappel master. And the post rappel master was like, yeah, man, I'd like to do some of these things. We should get on it. And I was like, okay. And yeah, did demonstrations in the basketball games, and
nice.
You know, we'd have days where we invite the civilians and we'd put them off the tower. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Cool. I had a lot of fun doing that.
I remember as a kid, you know, being at Fort Devens or maybe even here. But, you know, with my dad moving around from post to post, whenever they had like a family day or something like that, you know, we'd go out to the little wall and do some rappelling. And I always thought it was really cool. But yeah, going over the edge, man, it's a little, even now when, you know, I'm doing some rock climbing or something outdoors, we ended up doing a rappel. It's like, oh, geez, man, going over that lip, I still get a little nervous. Did you ever do the Australian
I
rappel?
Sure did. Oh, yeah. We used to.
If you can describe to people what that is.
So the Aussie rappel is basically going, you're going head down. You're going head down, dude. He's inverted. No, but yeah. I remember the first time I did it, I was once again terrified. And I remember they just told me, they were like, when because when you go off initially, you're supposed to basically be parallel with the ground. You're only, 60 feet up. And so there I was, parallel with the ground, locked out, and all I had to do was rotate. I was going to be upside down, and then you're just sliding. And they were like, yeah. And they were like, the crazy thing is you just trick your brain. Like when you go to trick your brain, when you're going to get out there, as you go out, you just make sure that your legs are locked, and then you just stare at the horizon. And they were like, it's really weird because when you get to that parallel point, it feels like you're like 2 inches off the ground, and like the fear goes away. And I was like, no way, dude.
Just the perception of when you're in that attitude, it feels like you're 2 feet off the ground.
Yeah. Wow. And so that's what they were like, don't look at the ground. They're like, just look at the horizon the whole time. And they were like, and just keep staring at it. And I was like, okay. And so, and your brake hand goes from being in the small of your back up to your chest. And so I pulled the rope up, pulled it up to my chest, and I pushed my hand out to the side, my left hand out to the side. And I like let myself out until I was parallel with the ground. I remember looking at the horizon, and I was like, yeah, it feels like I'm like 2 inches away from the ground. Wow. Like there's That's nothing. Crazy. Like now all I got to do is just invert myself and wrap my leg around the rope, and then just like ease the brake line out, and I'll just go down. And that's the way it went. I just kept looking at the thing or looking at the horizon. And then as I eased myself the rest of the way down, my foot locked in and everything was.
Looking at the horizon, was that a method to psychologically be better able to handle what you're doing because of that perception? Like if you look down, did it look like you were a lot higher and that would maybe freak you out a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Was that the reason behind that method, I guess?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it was crazy. It got me through it. And I was like, and Aussie rappelling ended up being like my favorite thing to do.
Wow, that's cool.
And we used to have these.
It's also one of the most dangerous, right?
I guess so. I used to do it all the time. And, just cause it looks cool.
All right.
But, and we used to have these competitions where we'd invert ourselves with the other guy and see who could get to the ground the fastest and stop at the lowest. And yeah, there was a couple times where I was like breathing and I could see the sawdust like going away from my face because I'm like that close to the ground. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Wow. I want to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want to talk about your Special Forces assessment and selection. So We'll be right back. All right, we're back. What was Special Forces assessment and selection like for you?
It was interesting. Most of the guys there were infantrymen, and at the time I was in, like I said, stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana, and the only infantrymen that I knew were from the 509th that was down there, I believe, and they were like supposed to be the guys that acted like the bad guys for all the people going there to train at the Joint Readiness Training Center. And so, yeah, I get there and I hadn't interacted with the 509th very much, except for whenever we went out there and it was pretty short. And so I showed up. It was actually a couple of my friends said that they were going to go to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, or SFAS. And yeah, I was like, well, I'm not going to, cut out on a dare. I'd already gone through air assault school, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. And I'm like, yeah, let's go do something else. And so we went out there, I ended up being the only one that went.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the other two guys were like, yeah, we got this other stuff going on, and so there I was headed to good old Fort Bragg, yeah, I guess. As with anything else that I had already started doing, I was really good at with teamwork, and so I was I just showed up and just listened to what they were doing and kind of paid attention to the infantry dudes around me, and they all kind of laughed at me because I was number one, and all the cadre said that number one didn't ever make it. So I was like, great, I got a target on my back here, and it was a good time though. I really enjoyed it.
As far as being number one, as far as like performance and testing and that kind of stuff?
No. So for that class, they had given us numbers.
Oh, roster numbers.
So yeah, so your numbers. And I was number one. And so because of my last name. And so yeah, there were no other, there were no Ablins there. As there was in the Golden Knights. And I showed up and I was like, yeah, I should be number one. And there's Joe Ablin. So there I was, number one. They're like, number ones don't ever make it. And I was like, okay. And they're like, oh, you're a Cav Scout too. You're definitely not making it. And I was like, you guys think you know everything about the map. And I was like, sweet. And got all this stuff going against me.
And that's one of the biggest things is land nav, right? Because you guys are doing a bunch of walking there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was lots of wet legs in the morning and wet legs at night from walking through all the brush and stuff. And so, yeah, and I ended up making it. I thought I was getting cut. Well, I didn't. It was the last day, and they were like, "Yeah, you got to go with this group, man. Sorry." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Well, I made it to the end, so They're like, "Yeah, here's your books. Make sure you study, for when you go to Q course." And I was like, "What?
There's more to this?"
Yeah. This was all a dare, man. And I actually started the Q course, and then that moved my family up, and my first ex-wife was having some issues with it all, and she sent me a letter, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't think I can do this like this. Like I think I need you to come back home to help me, with the kids." And I was like, well, my kids are my number one priority, And she kind of gave me an ultimatum. And I remember the first sergeant was like, "You're going to do fine here, man." He's like, "You might want to go ahead and stay." And I was like, "Well, my kids, man, I love my kids." And they're like, he was like, "Well, if it's not now, it'll be someday." And I was like, "Okay." And so I was like, "I got to take my chance." And so, yeah, I ended up leaving the Q course. And then that's ultimately when I went back to Fort Polk, and 3 months later I was in Iraq.
Oh man. So yeah, you were one way or another, you were pulled away from your family anyway.
I was.
And that's it's a tale that has happened many times over with people in the military. My brother had a similar situation as well. Man, yeah, that's tough. It's do you ever wonder like what it would have been like for you?
No, I ended up taking it as a lesson. Unfortunately, me and that's why she's my first ex-wife, is because we ended up getting divorced. And but that the situation would repeat itself when I was going through Golden Knight assessment and selection. I was actually dating a young lady, and she was like, "Just don't go." She was like, "Just get out of the military, and we'll get married and run off together." And I was like, "I've seen this before."
Right.
And I was like, I think I'm going to go ahead and go through this assessment and selection. And so,
yeah, one of the I guess the benefits to age and experience is that, you start to recognize those patterns and you learn something about yourself. And then, that is a positive thing. So how did that happen for you as far as going to the Golden Knights? Because you went to a section on the Knights, which was the Green Platoon. And I think at the time that was the first time that it was tried. Am I correct in that?
yes.
And if you could explain what that is and then, maybe backtrack a little bit and talk about how you found out about it and how you went over.
So Green Platoon was a thing that they were trying out for. They were having a low selection rate, as the Golden Knights do, and it was they were just having problems getting people to submit. They were having problems getting people to submit packets or packets to assessment and selection. And so what they wanted to do was basically breed from within. Take soldiers from the Army and turn them into Golden Knights, essentially. And so we started out with this.
And these are people with no prior skydiving experience, right?
Correct. And yeah, I had never made a skydive before. Actually, I take that back. Joe Jones actually took me on my first tandem, which was the year prior.
World famous.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he took me on a tandem in 2007. Excuse me. And so that was the only experience I had with the skydive, though. And at the time, my sergeant, or I guess I should explain more of Green Platoon, yeah. And so that's what they were trying to do, was get people from the Army to submit more packets. And so with that, I think we had 8 people that tried out initially, and then that went through the program. And then it slowly tapered off to, I think, down to 3 or 4 people. And then in the end, only 2 of us ended up going to selection. And then at the end of selection, I was the only one that ended up making it. And so unfortunately, for everybody in the military, they ended up shutting that program down for a little bit. But fortunate for me, I was able to make the team. The way all of that had actually gotten set up was I was in Fort Bliss. They moved me to Fort Bragg. And my plan was I had done the tech job, and so it was time for me to get out. And my sergeant major at the time, he was trying to get me to stay in. He was like, "What can I do?" And I was like, "Send me to free fall school." I'm like, that's all I want to do is get that cool badge, man. And I want to do some cool guy stuff. And he's like, "Our defenders can't go do that." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." I was like, "But the Army really wants me. They're going to give me this, right?" Right. And if I get that thing, then I'll probably stay in for the rest of my life. And they were like, "Well, let me see what I can do." And it was like no to MFF. And I was actually transitioning. I was going to classes and everything to get out of the military.
Oh, wow.
And then there I was walking inside the headquarters building to the 108th Brigade. And this guy comes strutting up in this super cool looking black jumpsuit. And I was like, "Man, what in the world is that?" And he was like, "Hey, where's your sergeant major at?" And I was like, he's right through that door, Sergeant." He was like, "All right, thanks." And I went up I was on the second floor. I worked in operations, and he ended up coming upstairs. He's like, "Actually, I came to talk to you and the sergeant major." And I was like, "Okay." And that's when I heard about the possibility of Green Platoon. And the sergeant major was like, how does that sound? He's like, you'll get a shot at it. And he's like, it's not guaranteed. He's like, but
learn to skydive for free. Hell yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so I was like, yeah. And then just as that whole process was going on, I was like, man, I could, at the time for air defenders, there was bonuses. And so I was like, dude, I could get a bonus. I could learn to skydive on my own. And then, like whether this works out or not, I can still try out for the Golden Knights.
Right.
And so I was like, well, there's my plan. So I actually re-enlisted, got the bonus, and then went and started skydiving on my own. And I had made 15 jumps, and then they're like, yeah, we're going through with it. And I was like, awesome. And so, yeah, there I was standing, with everybody else.
Who was it that was from the Knights in the black jumpsuit that you were talking about?
It was Charles Cooley.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's awesome.
Good old Chuck.
Oh, what a great guy, man. Yeah.
But yeah, and I pretty much owe that to him, because if he hadn't walked in there, if he hadn't kept that relationship up, and he was really big in air defense, and so yeah, thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. What was your experience in Green Platoon like?
It's kind of all a blur now. It happened so fast. I just remember like showing up. I had already gone through pretty much the nervous phase of skydiving. Like the nerves are still there because, people are watching you and everything else now, and it's part of the Army. But at the same time, I was on jump 16 whenever I started. And I remember at jump 11, I was like terrified still. And I remember my instructors out at Paraclete XP telling me like, hey man, like, what's your favorite part of the skydive? And I was like, I love the free fall and the, being under canopy. I just hate leaving the airplane. Like that terrifies me. They're like,
makes it anxiety.
Yeah. And they were like, well, you want to do it, right? And I was like, yeah. They're like, well, then the exit doesn't matter. They're like, you can blow that thing up, and it'll be fine. But
that's a good way to, that's great advice.
Yeah. And so after that, it made me relax, and, my exits weren't perfect after that, but they would eventually get there. They would eventually get good enough to be on the team. And so I was stable.
I had a similar experience where I wasn't scared on my first jump. I was just amped up for it. And then I knew what to expect a little more. And as I was jumping out of Huey helicopters at the time down at the Fort Rucker Sport Parachute Club, and doing like the static line progression method. But I just remember for like 20 jumps, I was petrified too. Nobody gave me that advice really, but that's some great advice. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah. Yeah, it was just being terrified all the way to jump 11, and I won't ever forget that. And then, going through, pretty much it was as soon as I got my A license, they were like, all right, sweet. You've completed your A license. Here's a start track. And for those that don't know, that's a demonstration canopy that allows you to stop the canopy and then come straight down on a target. And so, then from jump 26 all the way, up into my 500 jump, I think it was nothing but Star Trek jumps. And so, yeah.
In Green Platoon, watching people, kind of fade away, people that didn't stick with the program, what were some of the things that you saw that contributed to that? Like I remember hearing some people, and over the years you talk to some of the tryouts or some of the, selectees, is that some people come thinking that it's just going to be like this, woo, we're going to have a boogie, man, this is going to be awesome. And it's a lot more structured than that. And I think that, surprises a lot of people. What was that like for the people around you?
So because these guys weren't skydivers, I don't think they were, I think some of them might have been told, hey, go over here and do this thing. And they didn't know that it was an option. And so for a couple of them, it was just, I don't want to do this. I don't want to skydive. Right. Like I came over here, because the Army said so. And then, to find out that it's, it's all volunteer. Like, you're just like, oh, okay, well, cool. Well,
it is something that you need to have a burning desire to do for sure.
Yeah. And so, a couple of those people were like, yeah, no, we're done. And so they just left. Some people, of course, because of injury, and then, some people just were like, all right, well, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I've gotten to where I want to be at doing this whole thing, and I don't think I can handle the rest of it. And so, yeah.
So going into the actual selection portion, what was that like for you?
So it's interesting because a lot of the people that are going through selection, they've got this whole background that the cadre might know, gathering information about these people that are going through selection from the drop zones, and you have to submit the people that recommend you to go. And so those people are getting phone calls and they're getting information about, the people. And for me, they didn't have any of that information because my whole time learning how to skydive was spent with them. And so all they knew was me skydiving. They didn't know me they couldn't find anything out about me on a personal level because nobody had spent any time with me.
Right. You didn't have any additional references that would pertain to the selection process.
Yeah. So, I could have been a, church going fellow that was super easy, or I could have been this crazy wild card that hung out all kinds of hours and, and they didn't know. And so it was like just slowly basically trying to pry back, what I was about essentially. And yeah, I know, just kind of stuck to being Army as much as I could. And, it was fun cause, you learn, on the Golden Knights, you have to maintain that professionalism being in the Army, but at the same time, you have to be able to speak to the American public. So you have to kind of, let down a little bit of those guards that you normally have up that keep you feeling safe, from a military standpoint, and you can say certain things and it'll completely, dissolve a conversation that may or may not be happening that you don't want to happen. And
I had some of those same struggles, it took me a long time to be able to find a balance between that professionalism and being able to feel like I can be animated and not just stand there at parade rest if I'm, giving an interview or something like that. And if I go back and look at some of those earlier ones, like, oh man, that's pretty cringy. But, yeah.
Like, how do you like your job? Gun go bang. Like, yeah.
I like skydiving.
Yeah. But yeah, learning how to be a soldier as well as being proficient at talking to people, public speaking. Like I said, I was a shy kid, and yeah, it was awesome. It felt good to learn stuff about how to speak to people, how to create conversations, and
do you attribute the nights as for you coming out of your shell, so to speak? You said you were shy early on.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I remember Cheryl. One of the media relations ladies, we were doing some media training in tryouts, and she was like, "You have a great smile." She was like, "If you can't do anything else, just smile." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "I can do that." And so yeah. And there was a lot of stuff in tryouts that was like that really pushed you to come out of your shell because, as you know, it's not just about skydiving; it's trying to see how you are personally.
Right, yeah, they definitely put you under some stressors to see what your true colors are, what your true character is.
Yeah. And I remember one time I had to sing out there, and I'm not sure if that's what got me in or what, but yeah, they definitely liked it. And I remember we were packing. I think weather had rolled in or something, and they were like, these guys got to go do this stuff, and Ace, you got to get up there and sing on the microphone, because you got to talk to people or whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll go up there. And they were like, just sing a song. Okay. And I started singing. I think I started singing Run Around Sue.
Nice.
And yeah. And yeah, everybody was having a good time.
Who was your cadre?
Oh man. Tom Dunning, Jared Zell, J. Cole and D. Cole.
Nice.
Both of them. Man, I won't ever forget Derek's voice as he's riding around on a what's it called, on a cart, screaming "hurry up" as we're packing, and
hurry up.
Yeah. No, he did this like growl thing where he hurry up, and it was like a cadence as he like drove around, and you're just like sitting there and like, oh gosh, and like that your stuff is okay, but it's just like you're just moving at this pace, which is funny because like when you break it all down, you're really not moving that fast, but yeah, it was just funny, like the stress that you put yourself on or under and to accomplish those things.
As far as really not moving that fast, you're talking about like breaking down the drop zone and setting it up, that kind of stuff?
No, just simply packing.
Right.
Like, yeah. Like most people would see that pack job as a fast pack job, but like even Jared Zell did it, to 7 minutes, and he did it talking. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, yeah, you're going to do this and and you're put the bag out and, flake your canopy and, put it in the bag and make sure your line is straight and do this check, do that check. And, he's closing up and there it is, 7 minutes. And I'm like, it was that simple, but there I am out there, sweating. The plane's coming down. Oh gosh, Mr. Reiner, what are you doing? And,
Yeah. So, top pressure. It's man, yeah, what a cool experience. What's one funny highlight or story that you can think of, with your teammates?
Oh gosh. That kind of put me on the spot.
It seems like everybody's, got some funny stories, at some point, but
as far as like being on the road or whatever.
Well, no, like during tryouts.
During tryouts, there was one time where, and I didn't know if they were planning on cutting this guy, but that's what they told me, that they were planning on cutting a guy, and he had said that he was the fastest person in the tryout group, and they were like, Ace, they were like, beat him. And I was like, man. And they were like, if you don't beat him, you're getting cut.
Oh man.
And I was like, I really don't want to get cut. And so I ended up lapping him. They yeah, and I felt bad, but at the same time, like it seemed like I don't know, there was a like mess talking going on, and so between that and the cadre telling me that, and just trying to find the middle ground to make everything okay, because that's what you're doing in tryouts, as everybody wants everybody to make it, right? And of course, as though not everybody is going to make it. They're going to see these things that certain people don't belong there, and or they could be a liability to the team, and so yeah, and I was like, well, whatever they see, like I don't see, and I just got to do this, and so yeah, and all we were doing was running around the headquarters building. And I think we were doing like, I don't know, it was multiple laps. And so, yeah, I came around one time and they were like, you better beat him. And I was like, okay. And I just took off. And yeah, that made me laugh. They ended up not cutting him. He ended up making the team. So I was pretty happy about that. I was like, oh no.
I won't ask who it is, just so we can save the embarrassment of you lapping him around the building.
I won't mention any names, but it might have started with a Jay-Z. No, I'm just messing. It wasn't him. He was a cadre.
So I think you're one of the only people on the team that I can think of that has served on the Golden Knights, that has served on every team or every section within the team. That's, not only the demonstration teams, both demonstration teams, the black and the gold, the tandem section, the vertical formation skydiving team, the formation skydiving team, and you name it, you've done it. So yeah, just
except for swim team and headquarters.
Oh, right. But if you can talk about some of your different experiences on the teams, what were some highlights, and what did you learn from that experience from each individual section?
Oh man, gosh, I started out on the black demonstration team, and that was my new guy year. So that was totally learning. And that's kind of where I learned, you got to listen, you're starting out and you don't know what's going on. And so it's just like listening. And it was hard because, some of the people, I was a staff sergeant or an E6, and there were some guys that were in charge of us that were E4s, and you're just like, what is going? Why am I have to listen to you? Like,
there's a different structure on the team based on experience and time spent on the team, right?
Yeah. And so here I am, listening to these people, and it's like there's some stuff you got to listen to, because they have information that you don't, and unlike the Army where it all gets passed down, like there are some people that make it to the team and then they ended up getting put into leadership positions essentially. And so you have to listen to these people. And yeah, and so that was one thing that was a little odd. But that's the way it works, and it works great. Because you just don't know, you can't get that training anywhere else, and it's specific to the Golden Knights. And that's what I loved about it, was how efficient that was. And so, yeah, I had been in charge of soldiers this whole time, and that was going on 9 years. And now here I am listening to a soldier, you know, and actually having to listen to him, and because he knew more than I did. And so yeah, it was pretty interesting being on the black demonstration team initially, but I had a great year. It was one of the best years. It was the most fun year, I would say. It was all brand new and it was awesome. And then after that, I decided I wanted to compete. Ike used to talk about planting seeds to trees we'll never sit under.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a cool thought, but at the same time, I was like, man, I want to see the fruits of what we're doing. And I was like, you know, competition sections where that's at. And 8-way had just gotten revamped, and so they were full. And they were like, yeah, there's style and ac. And honestly, I wasn't very good at accuracy initially. And so Elise Tennyson took me under her wing out at Laurinburg. And so I was doing accuracy already. And even though I wasn't landing on the tuffet, she was coaching me. And she was like, you should try out for this. And I was like, okay. And so, yeah, I got me some pointy shoes and, you know, that sweet jumpsuit. And there I was, you know, looking like Britney Spears, you know, jumping out of the airplane, staring at this dot on the ground. And yeah, that was a good time being on style and accuracy team. I remember like there was like this, I kind of had this chip on my shoulder that I was better just because I'd gotten good at accuracy. And so I was just like, yeah, you know, whatever. What are these other countries going to know? You know, they can't know. And Elise was like, dude, these guys are good, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever, man, dude, I can park this parachute wherever I want. And it's like even more precise than that. And
oh yeah, for those who don't know, competition accuracy, you have this big accuracy canopy that allows you to come straight down once you transition it to the target. And the target is well, when I was doing it, I think it's gotten smaller since, but it was a 15 centimeter electronic scoring pad with a 3 centimeter center. But I believe that has
went
gone
down to 2 centimeters. Yeah,
down to 2 centimeters. So when you were talking about the pointy shoes, for those that don't know, it's essentially you're jumping with shoes that have the heel shape down to a point so that you can, land. Your first point of contact is on that 2 centimeter dot, and then your butt kind of goes down on the tuffet. But that's how specific and how accurate you need to be. And a lot of these European countries that didn't have the weather to get up very high, you would just have to get out at a lower altitude doing the accuracy stuff, and that's all they did. And yeah, they had some people that were deadly accurate, but
yeah. And I remember going, so I spent that whole first year on style, and actually that was the only year because they ended up sending me to gold team, but we'll get to that. I remember going to that competition, and man, I just got stomped.
Which competition was that?
Gosh, it was in Switzerland. That's right. We went to Germany, competed at their nationals, got stomped there. Went to Switzerland, got stomped there. And I remember going to that second one. I was like, dude, I do not train enough. Like, I thought I was training plenty. I don't train enough. I was like the accuracy trainer, everything. Like I need to be hitting that stuff. And yeah, after that, it was pretty rough. Coming back to the United States with my head hanging down, because I was just like, dude, those guys are jumping after 10 jumps, and it's all like golf. You want the lowest score, and the lowest score you can have is a 0. And then it's a centimeter is a point after that, all the way out to 15 centimeters. And so, you got guys that were leaving after 10 jumps with only 3 centimeters. And you're just like, and there I was with like 36. I was landing all over the place. I got one dead center in Switzerland, and it was like the highlight of my style and accuracy career. Yeah. And yeah, I was just like, man, like, that hurts. And like, I think that was really good for me though, because yeah, sometimes you need your face pushed in the mud a little bit, especially when you're trying to be competitive, right? To understand what you're doing and who you're up against, and sure. it you might perceive it a certain way, but man, like always be humble, because you don't know who's out there ready to rock your
every
world.
Now and then, once you start to get a bit too confident, you got to eat some humble pie, and it's just part of the process. And
so yeah, there it was, coming fresh out of the oven, and and yeah, then they sent me over to gold team. And that was interesting. They put me in a leadership role there. And yeah, I went from being a speaking team leader all the way up to assistant team leader over a couple years. And then
There's always a good-natured, kind of ribbing and, maybe a competition between the black demonstration and gold demonstration team. What did you see were the main differences between the two teams?
It seemed like black team at the time was super rigid, and it's funny talking to the alumni that it like switches. Like sometimes
it's the wild guys.
And you have one rigid team and you have one super cool team, and then then it, like as time progresses, you watch those things meld, and maybe people transition from one team to the other, or maybe one guy gets another idea, and then just the attitude kind of changes. But I just remember we had also had an influx of new guys, and they were kind of changing the mindset on how we treated new guys, whereas before it was kind of like, hey, just be quiet and do your job. To where it was like, hey, times are changing. We need to evolve. So, let's get some insight. No question is a wrong question. So, let's see if we can, put some new stuff into this thing. And so, bringing those new guys in, especially with that whole change of tides that was going on then, it was interesting. And, having to learn how to do all that while being a leader, and receive information from the new guys and stuff, and maybe what their insights may or may not have been. That was all interesting. And, we just got better as time went on. And after Gold Team, I became a tandem instructor. And so they had sent me over to Tandem Team. And I think that was the year that I'd gotten a Tandem Team for like a month or so. And 8-way ended up missing somebody, or they had... you guys were having trouble, I think, with the video guy. Like he had gotten hurt or something, and you just needed one for the year. And so I kind of came in and filled in. And so that's when I ended up on 8-way for that year. And that was a lot of fun, doing those jumps. It's crazy hard trying to stay above that formation. So my respect is off to any 8-way video flyer. Because, man, that group of people leaves and you're just like, oh, gosh.
I think at that point in time, too, we probably weren't the best example for you, because I think we were kind of in a rebuild, a restructure, kind of at that point. So when that happens, the formation tends to move around a bit more than it should.
In fact, I think I went through you twice in one skydive.
That's right. Forgot about that. Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Good time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I felt terrible too.
It happens, man. Yeah, it's those who have and those who will kind of deal. And it's fortunately I was a bit younger then, so I was able to take those impacts probably better than I would be able to now. But yeah, no big deal. Yeah. Going back to your time on the demonstration teams, what were some of your favorite moments on the teams, like favorite demos?
Oh man, so Tuscaloosa, Alabama will always go down as one of my favorite. We were there. It was, I believe it was their first air show that they were having there. And, there were small acrobatic airplanes, and they told me that, cause I was a narrator for the jump, and the narrator jumps out first. And, they basically they're the wind drift indicator. They let the rest of the team know basically where the spot is, if the spot that they calculated is good or not good, and how they need to adjust it to get the rest of the team in. And so, and then on top of that, you're jumping the American flag. And so, you got all this stuff going on. And then on top of that, they're like, hey, these two little airplanes are going to come in and they're going to circle you and, be burning smoke while you're under canopy. Yeah. And so I remember like being in the airplane, like nervous already, but now I have these two airplanes, and I was like, oh man. And I remember, Jeff Schaefer, he was my team leader, and I'm in the door spotting with him, and he points out, and I could just see these two little airplanes way off on the horizon. And I'm looking down to this sea of people. I think it was like 300,000 people that were there. Wow. And so maybe that number's a little inflated, but
a lot of people.
Yeah, there was a ton of people there. And I left the airplane, and I remember getting under canopy, and I looked over my shoulder, and they were just beelining straight to me. And I was like, oh gosh, here they come. And those dudes knife turn, and they were just on their sides, and they're going around. I'm making eye contact with them as they're sideways, just looking up out the top of their cockpits. So cool. Yeah. And they're both burning smoke. And I'm just like, just face into the wind. That's all you got to do, man. Face into the wind. Put the American flag down when I needed to. But I remember specifically when they went away, because they're flying around me. And so all I hear is the engines of their airplanes. And I was just like, nervous about that. And when they went away, I heard this like, and it sounded a lot like a jet. And I was like, oh gosh, there's a jet up here with me. And I'm like looking around and I'm going nuts trying to figure out where this jet's at. So I don't know where it's at. And
just to help people, get a better, maybe big perspective of what's going on in the air show. Timing is very critical. So you've got a small window of time that you're trying to do these maneuvers. And oftentimes if there's not really great communication, there can be another act or something is that what you were concerned about?
Yeah. And I didn't, and it sounded close. And I was like, man, and I'm at 1,500 feet. So I'm just like looking around, panicking. And I'm just like checking the spot, looking up, looking at my watch, making sure that I have the proper time so that I land on the last note of the national anthem with the American flag. And when I looked down, it like kind of hit me that it was coming from the ground. And that was
from the crowd.
Yeah, and awesome. They're just screaming at me, going nuts there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And I go in and land. And so that being one of the things, another thing that we did a couple jumps later throughout the weekend was a show line spread. And that's where you land as close as you can, which is 15 feet away from the crowd. And so basically all the parachutists line up, try to be on the same level and land within so many seconds of each other in front of the crowd. And the cool thing about that is that you can, like, you land and there's like these kids that are just, I mean, oh my gosh, what is this thing that's standing in front of me? And like every time I felt lit up and just went up and started giving high fives, and you just everybody walks down the center to show center, and you're just high fiving everybody, and people are just rushing to that crowd line, to get a high five from you. And just that feeling of landing and just looking at those eyes and being an inspiration, and which is ultimately what would end up making me want to get into acting is trying to be an inspiration. And so yeah, that really fueled that. And so being there on the show line, just walking down, it felt amazing.
That's super cool. Yeah, I love those moments. And when you see, whether you're doing it or watching it, when you see a show line spread and it's well timed and everybody's landing, it's really something to see. And then just that feeling, just like you said, of walking down that crowd line, I always really enjoyed that, because you're the only soldier maybe a lot of these people have seen, in their lives when you go to, some of these places. Yeah, super cool. So you went to the tandem section. What was your experience like there?
I love doing tandems. It was great. Like taking people on tandems. So that was after 8-way. I'd gone back to the tandem team for a little bit, and ultimately that's where the vertical formation skydiving team would get their start from, was on the tandem team, because all the members of that team initially started on there. And so
it was a necessary part of the job, especially for videographers, right? To fly in different vertical positions.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you want to get those under the tandem shots, essentially, learning how to backfly and getting under there. I know there's some people that can arch like really well. But for those that can't, like flipping over onto your back and being able to fly in multiple attitudes really helps. And so yeah, but taking people on tandems, like getting people through what is probably their biggest fear, and that's being 13,500 feet above the ground and leaving the airplane with them, and them getting under canopy and landing and just being like, man, you did it. Thanks. And just that feeling. And I got all kinds of reactions. I got everything from, I remember a young lady being just as stoic as could be. And she's like, yeah, this is going to be great. I'm like, cool. Went and did the jump and got under canopy. Like, how you doing? I'm fine. I'm like, okay. And then we land. You have a good time? Yeah, that was cool. Like, oh, awesome. There was a girl that I took, and she was super quiet. We got in the airplane. She was like, can I scream? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, we're about to go to the door here now. So, yeah, if you want to scream, go ahead. And she just screamed, oh my God, all the way to the door to 5,000 feet.
Oh,
when
really?
I opened the canopy, or 5,500 feet. But yeah, And
it was cool for me to, whenever we were on the plane with you guys or with Tandem Section, to hear, just how, because you guys, to a certain degree, you're not only informing, but you're entertaining on the way up too. So it was cool to, hear some of those. Or what was Joe Jones' thing? He would bring, was a Tandem Instruction for Dummies or something like that. He'd actually have the book with him, and he was, just really cool. Brought a good vibe to, a lot of times when we're training, it can be, pretty repetitive, but having you guys on there brought, made things fresh and funny. Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad we could entertain you guys too, because I know some of those jokes can get a little bit repetitive, and that was my big thing too. Was also trying to come up with new stuff. How do you make somebody laugh again without having to say the same thing over again?
Right. Keep it interesting for yourself, I'm sure too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and so that was a lot of fun. At the end of it all, doing all the tandem stuff, I remember being a videographer and always being like, "Stop saying all right," like, because it's like, "All right, here we go," and it's like every single time. And
for so, like the lead into the video or something, right?
Yeah, and so and I'm pretty sure if I were to do a video now, a tandem video. Again, I'd probably say all right at least once during that time.
Yeah, just have it. You've done it so many times. What were some of the celebrities that you've taken up on tandems?
Oh man,
any notable jumps?
See, Chris Porter and Steve Byrne. They're comedians, and if you haven't ever heard of them, they were amazing. Both of them are, super memorable people that I took on tandems. I took. Oh gosh, I'm going blank on their names. I took a Pittsburgh Steeler. He was an MVP. Man, what was his name? He works for CNN. I can see his face. I took him on a tandem. And then Kirk Leopold. That guy was really interesting. He gets on the airplane. They told me that he had done skydives before. He had like at least 50 or so. So he had his A license. I'm like, why is this guy coming to do a tandem with us? They're like, he's some Navy guy. And I was like, man. And so, we get on the airplane and I was like, so what'd you do in the Navy? And he was like, oh, I was a captain. And I don't know much about the Navy, but I know that a captain is like a colonel to us.
Right.
And so I was like, dude, you said that like it was nothing. And he was like, yeah. He's like, I was a captain of a ship. And I was like, what ship? And he was like, the USS Cole. And Reese Pendleton was with me on that jump, and I remember like he was just kind of looking out the window, just kind of staring, enjoying himself. And I kind of leaned back and look over at Reese, and Reese looks at me and he's like, "Why do I know that?" Like he lipped it to me, and I was like, "I know it too, but I can't place it." And come to find out, it was a boat that was in Yemen that got blown up.
Oh, wow.
And he was in charge of that boat. Jeez. Yeah, and then after that, we get done with the jump, and we're doing an anti-terrorism briefing afterwards. And, everybody's like, oh God, we got to do an anti-terrorism brief. This is so dumb. And then we walk in and there's Kirk in a suit, and he's handing me his book that he did or that he wrote.
Oh,
and,
cool. Was he giving the briefing too?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He
nice.
gave the anti-terrorism. It was a great briefing. And it was, and then after that, a couple weeks later there, I was sitting there and kind of scrolling through the channels, and there he was on Fox News, giving an anti-terrorism brief on there. And I was like, oh, that's nuts, man.
Mm.
And his perspective on whatever was going on then. But man, I feel like I'm leaving out some people here and I feel really bad. And I told myself that's why I bring this book, is because I meant to write all their names down, because I knew that'd probably be a question. But yeah.
Man, you've done so much. It's hard to, like trying to go back and unpack all this stuff, it's a lot of ground to cover. So, not remembering. I was never the best with names either, so it's a difficult thing to, unless you're around someone a whole lot, and it kind of is able to set in your mind a bit more, but I think it's only natural.
There was a baseball player. He did a no-hitter and played for, I believe, the Arizona Diamondbacks. I also took him. He's really cool. He's I think he worked for some sports network or something now. And yeah, he was awesome. And so yeah, it was always a good time though. The guy that I took that was from the Pittsburgh Steelers, the whole time he was like, "You're not a Baltimore Ravens fan, are you?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Are you sure, man? I can't be going with a Baltimore Ravens fan." I was like, "No, you're good. You're good." And we got in the airplane and he asked me again. I was like, no. I was like, we're good. And we left the airplane, got under canopy. I was like, hey, I got to tell you something. He's like, you're a Baltimore Ravens fan. And here this man is, and he's bigger than I am. Here's this NFL player, Super Bowl MVP. And he's over there and he's, kicking and everything else and like shaking his fists. And I'm I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. And he just got quiet and he didn't say anything. He's like, that's okay. That's okay. And I was like, okay. He's like, you're not a Baltimore Raven fan. I was like, okay.
That's funny. What are some things that you learned about yourself from your time on the nights?
Like, just don't quit. Like, nothing's over until it's over. And so, and yeah, it was, there was a lot of times where things didn't necessarily go the way I wanted to. I wanted to spend another year on style and accuracy. And there were some things going on with the team that it just wasn't allowing it. I ended up going to the demonstration team and so just trying to see the silver lining for everything that's going on. And ultimately, if it wasn't because of that, if it wasn't, and that goes back to me being in the Army and how that all went. I didn't want to come to Fort Bragg. But because of that set me up for to become a Golden Knight. And, you know, if it wouldn't have been for that Sergeant Major Clem, who brought me over to Fort Bragg, that would have never happened. I'd probably, who knows, still be in the Army, like some Sergeant Major somewhere, or, you know, doing something else. But because of the way that everything went, it just put me exactly where I needed to be. And I like to say that I kind of flew by the seat of my pants through my Army career. But yeah, for the most part, just finding the silver lining and everything. And trying to make everything positive, trying to see everything in a positive light. And, you know, you go through your little mad streak or whatever that you have, and however long that may be, but, you know, you got to get out of it, and you got to get back on the horse and get back to work and try to get to your destination as best as you can. Yeah,
it's a difficult balance to maintain, right? Because you want to have, I think those of us that want to achieve or accomplish, you know, things constantly, you've got your sights set forward. And, you know, I think a lot of us that think that way want to have things structured and planned, and it's got to go like this. And, you know, we want to have some semblance of control.
Yep.
And when things don't happen like that, yeah, you're right. You know, it's like, son of a bitch, you know, it's like, you know, this wasn't in the plans, but if you don't keep that positive attitude and that positive mindset that you're talking about, then you might miss some really exciting and, you know, potentially life-changing things in the best kind of ways that, you know, you had no idea to plan on just because you took a different path over here.
Yeah. It's like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And for sure, I've been punched in the face, both metaphorically and literally.
But with your positive mindset and attitude, you know, and, you know, keeping that winning smile that you have, you've always seemed to come out on top.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been awesome to watch your journey and your progress over the years. Aside from the different skill sets you had to learn to be part of each section within the team, were there different life lessons that you learned unique to each section?
So I remember going into vertical formation skydiving. There was a moment where they were like, you can be inside or you can be the video guy. And like at that moment, I remember just thinking, I just want to be on the team. So whatever I can do. And being the video guy wasn't what I wanted to do initially, but once I started doing it, like I found that I really love that. And that was kind of big, because usually things would end up working out even if they didn't work out initially. And for that to be inside was like a big thing for me. But then doing video, it just became something that I remember, like somebody being like, it was the judges at one of the nationals competitions. And, the judges came out and they were like, we love your video. Your video is just so easy to judge. And they said that, and that was a huge ego boost to me. And I don't feel like I have that like a big ego, but that was like really big to me. And when that set in, I was like, I'm good at something. Like, and somebody else told me that. And I was like, I think I'm going to run with this. And so yeah, which would, I guess, ultimately end up setting me up for everything else that would end up happening after I got out of the Army. But yeah, initially I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be on the inside, and you know, I wanted to be in front of the camera. And
but you got some positive feedback from someone who decided to, you know, tell that to you, and that's awesome. It's I think it's great to hear those kind of stories because you never know what kind of impact you can have on someone else by, you know, just saying something. If you recognize something that they're doing well, just stating that to them, might give them that extra wind under their sails to be able to go on and do more awesome stuff with it.
Yeah, for sure. Cause I was definitely still like, at that point, I was still wanting to be on the inside. And when she said that, it was like between that and the guys telling me that they only trusted me to do that. That was also felt like a huge responsibility, because unlike the other skydiving competitions, the video guy is usually up above or beside, whereas in vertical formation skydiving, the video guy is actually underneath the formation, and if they're in the wrong place, things can go bad. And
especially with the sun plays into that as well, right? Like certain times of the day, that's more difficult. If you can talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, as you get to between, I guess it would be noon and 3, the sun is almost directly overhead, or usually right in the way. It basically whites out the cameras. Back then, it would do that, and now it's just so bright that it's
the judges can't use the video, right?
Correct. And so yeah, sometimes if it's bad enough, they'll ask if we just want to sit down for those couple jumps. And one thing that I liked was because I could get my video so close, you could usually still see the video that I was doing. And so yeah, that was really big to me, was making sure that you could see it. And, I would always kick myself in the butt every time after that, it was like, I have to get the shot. I need to get the shot. And every time I wouldn't, it's like, I'm just frustrated. Now I'm a big proponent of, when you're competing, or even when you're training, like, you can't beat yourself up too much. You gotta give yourself that grace.
Yeah.
And then
look forward to the next round for sure. Yeah.
And yeah, I realized that I was doing that, and I was like, I haven't ever been that way. But as soon as that judge told me that, I was like, I have this thing, yeah. and I have to do this. Like, I have to be good at it. And so, yeah. And that was the other thing was, now I have to eat my own words that I've told to so many people, that, hey man, come on, calm down. It's okay. Oh, I just messed up. Like, oh, right. You messed up. Like, it's okay. Like, we're moving on. And, now here I am, in my own head doing the same thing, like having this conversation of calm down. Wow, you could have done better. And it's like, no, like, just calm down. You learned the lesson. Let's move on.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance psychologically, because on the one hand, you need to be critical on yourself so that you don't repeat the same kind of mistakes, and that you can perform optimally, going into future rounds. But on the other hand, at the point where it comes to competition, I think it's better to be more harder on yourself during training. But when you get to competition, I think, go ahead and recognize the mistakes you made, but then it's very important to put those off to the side and move forward to the next round so they don't continue to haunt you at that point. But it's an interesting balance psychologically. You've done so many different kind of modalities in skydiving itself, so many different disciplines. What would you attribute your success to? Would it be your positive mindset, or what would it be?
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of just keep pushing. I was always a tiny person. I didn't weigh 100 pounds until I was a sophomore in high school, and I wasn't over 5 feet until then as well. I joined the Army. I was 120 pounds. And when I left basic training, I was 130. And so I was a super tiny, skinny kid. And so, yeah, there was just always this drive that people are like, oh, that kind of the last picked on the team kind of person. And just cause I was small. And so there was always this, not necessarily proving myself, cause I never really felt like I needed to prove myself, but, just this drive that I always had to accomplish things. Like, okay, you're the last pick. What can I do to help my team now? Like, cause those people, they don't think I can do this. And so, or they don't think I'm going to be good enough. What can I do to help make this better? And so, yeah, just having that drive. And so anything that I would put my mind to after that, it's like, okay, let's get that drive. Let's get going.
That's cool. That's always something that I've recognized about you over the years, just your, that attitude and positive mind. It just seems to have gotten you through so much. And it's been inspiring to me to, see from my position. Now I'd like to talk a bit about speed competition. You got into that as well as one of the many other things. If you can talk about that a bit.
So speed, that actually started when I was doing style and accuracy, once again, wearing the oops, I did it again suit, that bright, shiny latex suit that we would wear. And it's there looking like it's painted on you, with very little to the imagination.
And before you get too far into it, if you can tell people that don't know what the speed event is all about.
So basically you're leaving the airplane and you're trying to go as fast as you can until you get to 5,000 feet.
It's a head down vertical attitude.
Absolutely. Right? And there's some people that say that you might be able to attain it head up. But I don't think I've seen anybody actually attempt to do that before. But yeah, so right now everybody is doing it head down, and yeah, you're just trying to go as fast as you can. My fastest speed that I ever went was 302 miles an hour.
Jeez. Yeah, you're the fastest man in the world for a while, right?
Not in the world. I was the fastest man in the Army. Kyle Lopres was beating me right then, and then it would end up being other folks. But yeah, I remember being in style and wearing that suit. And when you leave the airplane, you're almost head down. You're definitely at an angle. But yeah, I just remember getting out and feeling that speed that I was building, and just being like, man, I want to know how fast I'm going. I don't care, because at the end style, what you're supposed to do is gain as much speed as you can, and then at the bottom end, you have to do this like weird little tuck up thing that you do, and then it's a difference, it's basically 6 maneuvers. It's a turn, and then a back loop. And so you do that twice. And depending on the set, or the dive pool the small dive pool that they have, you could either have to turn left, then right, then back loop, and then all the different mixes that you can do with left, right, and a back loop. But back loop being the third and the sixth thing that you have to do. And then you open up and you're trying to do that as fast as possible. And there was people that were doing that in like under 6 seconds. So that less than a second per maneuver. And that is like mind blowing after doing it. But I just remember leaving the airplane after every style set. And I'm like, I don't want to do the bottom stuff. Mm-hmm. I just want to see how fast I can go. How fast was I going, man? Like, I wish they would just make a competition for that. And I remember going to nationals in Arizona, and there was these dudes in, overalls, and they're just big, husky guys leaving the airplane. And I was like, what are they doing? And I was on the Golden Knights, and the Golden Knights were like, oh, they're doing something called speed. I don't know. And I was like, there it is. It's happening. Mm-hmm. And I remember, where were we at? I think we were in Paris, Skydive Paris, and Nationals was going on there. And there was we were competing in BFS, but at the same time, we saw an opportunity. Maybe we might be able to compete in speed as well for the US. And so I was stoked. Like, the rest of the team was like, yeah, we're going to go do this and we're going to try our best. And I was like, absolutely. Like, I am excited. And so, yeah, we went and we actually made the majority of that US team. We had all gotten a slot. And so there we were, off to Australia. And I think ultimately that would end up setting up speed for nationals. Because that was still a trial year. And so I ended up taking bronze that year. And yeah, it was interesting.
I remember talking to Joe Ablin, who you mentioned earlier, about after his first competition experience doing it. And he was like, I will never do that again. That was one of the scariest things I've ever done. And this is a guy that's got a lot of jumps and has done a lot of things on the team too. But he was just talking about I guess in those early days, they didn't have some of the things dialed down. Like, you got to have stuff locked down tight. Like, there are dudes that tape their riser covers shut on their parachutes so that, I guess to slow down the deployment a little bit. But, he was just talking about how loud it got in his helmet, with the rattling. And I guess he didn't at the time. I can't remember. I don't know. I don't think he had the sights or the indicators and the face shield that would give you. So he said he couldn't hear his audible altimeter, and he was just like, yeah, that was one of the most scary things I've ever done. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah. I actually remember that. I remember him walking off and being like, yeah, that's the end of my competition. I was like, good job, bud. You did it. And
so is it scary for you as well? Or were you just like, yes, let's go?
There's something about the middle of that skydive where you're starting to get to as fast as you can go, because of course you have a terminal velocity, and that's all depending on your weight, and then of course drag and then how tight, how you can hold your body and fly through it all, essentially.
Do you get the speed wobbles at any point?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I was trying to wear that Britney Spears suit again. And there I was, and it's crazy because I remember thinking the first couple jumps that I did, I actually got unstable, and here I am. I have a couple thousand jumps at this point. And I remember like getting off my head one time, and it's like, you're just over there, arms flapping, legs kicking, and you're just like, oh my God, I want my mama. It's just crazy because you're just like, I am a professional skydiver. Like, this is what I do. All I had to do was roll over onto my belly and everything would have been fine. But here I am, I get loose on going that fast, and I'm just over there throwing my legs around, and you have kind of like a laughing moment there because you're just like, wow, I really spazzed out. Like, that was nuts. And then, you kind of lose it every now and again. But yeah, that first time I remember like getting unstable doing that, and it was just like flipping through the air, and you're like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. And yeah.
And then I would imagine as you get to a certain speed, probably in the 200s somewhere, when you're going so fast that every little movement, makes a huge difference. And if you're, man, I could imagine that you could get thrown off pretty quickly.
Yeah. Especially when you start trying to overcorrect. And that's essentially what happened to me. I was trying to overcorrect, and, everything's like flying an airplane. And so you're just trying to be symmetrical and not move too much. And me being just barely have gone over, I only went over 300 that one time. And so, yeah, usually I was averaging about 280 miles an hour.
Wow.
And so yeah, now the guys are going, like 327 or something like that. And they do it all in kilometers per hour. So I'm sure they're cursing me right now if they're listening to this, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember what Nick did at the World Parachuting Championships down at Crystal Coast, but
it was over 500.
He won the competition, and it was just amazing. Yeah, man, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And this might be a bit of a dick question, but what, if any, team was your favorite to be on, and why? And within the Golden Knights. And there's no wrong answers here, and I promise not be disappointed if you don't say Formation Skydiving.
Yeah, it was VFS for sure. Just like being on that team, and it was brand new to the Golden Knights. Like, I know that they had attempted it before, but for it to actually stick and then stay around, and once again, getting that information from that judge, and going through all the things that we went through from, almost making it to the podium, and then not at that one nationals in Arizona. And that was a big, that was a soap opera in itself, round to round. And then, all the way going to Australia with those guys to do speed. And then, you turn around and we were on the heels of SDC Core, and man, just like watching us just go. I remember being in Saarlouis, Germany, and like just seeing our numbers and knowing that it might have been possible, because we didn't finish that competition. The weather rolled in. We weren't able to complete it. And I'm not sure if we could have.
Was that 2017?
I believe so.
Okay.
27 or 2016. But yeah. The clouds rolled in. We were actually in the sky. We were up there, and I remember SDC Core, Jason Russell, was actually spotting, and he looked back and he's like, yeah, I can't see anything. And Jesse was like, I want to give it a shot. And he's like, go for it, man. And I went back there, and Jesse looked out of the airplane, and then he looked back at me, and he's like, what do you think? And I looked at him, and I was like, if you go, I go, man. You just got to say the word. I'll climb out of this thing. And he made the right decision, and we ended up landing with the airplane. And so,
that's a tough call over at those competitions in places like Germany. Saarlouis is kind of notorious for, getting some clouds, and we didn't finish our meet either that year. But it just goes to show too that part of competition, we're like, hey, let's take that first punch in the first round, so that you may only get one round of those competitions. So it's it's good to be charging out of the gate. We're in a little different position than you guys were at the time. But who all was on your VFS team that year?
Oh man, Dan Osorio, John Long, Jesse, and
was it Reese?
I want to say Reese. Yeah, Reese.
Yeah. What a great crew too. I'm sure that, had to play a part in why you enjoyed being there,
Oh, yeah.
during that time, because all those guys just, loved what they were doing and were super passionate about it. And, all great guys, man. I can see why you really enjoyed that experience.
And the crazy thing is, like, on the demonstration team, you get to know your teammates, but on a competition team, you have to really dive deep into everybody, because like it's like being in a relationship. You have to know the other people. You have to be able, as look into their eyes and know which direction they're going to go, just based off of whatever kind of facial movement they might make, or how their body contorts, or whatever. And just getting into those races. And those guys are still my best friends. Like we message each other still. And so yeah, it's the VFS team was definitely it. Yeah,
that's awesome. And now things have kind of come full circle for you as far as STC Core, and that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. But I would, since you brought that experience up, I would like to touch on that. And if you can tell people what your role is now with STC Core.
Yeah. So last year I was approached by Jason Russell. He asked me if I wanted to be the video guy, and I was like, absolutely. When I got out of the military, that's what I thought I would be able to do. But they had a fully capable video person then. And so yeah, I just kind of sat back and, I was like, well, if that opportunity ever presents itself, I'm going to jump on that. And, it did. And so yeah, I was like, absolutely. And last year, was our first year, and it was an absolute blast. Like we had a great time pushing, just watching those guys. Of course, there's Jason Russell, Stephanie Strange, Andy Locke, and Colin Conway. And it's funny because I actually won an indoor medal with Colin one time, and so yeah, it's good to be back on a team with him.
Nice.
And yeah, especially with SDC Core and their legacy, being multiple world champions, multinational champions, and so yeah, to become part of that. And those guys, even though they were competitions or a competition against us on the Golden Knights, like everybody in the skydiving community, which is another thing that I love about it, is that we're all, still friends. Like we all give each other information. Everybody just wants to see the sport grow.
Right.
And how
there's a mutual respect that everybody has for each other. Yeah.
Like, this is the way I did it, and it was fast. Can you do it faster? And it's like, yeah, man, let's give it a run. And, and so that whole back and forth, I love that.
Yeah, and that's cool. That is one of the things that I enjoy most about the sport too, is that it's got that progressive nature. And if you're the champions that are really good are the ones who'll be the first to share their information with you, because they're like, hey man, yeah, let's all share this stuff. And then whatever team wins is truly the best. It's not going to be because we're hoarding this information or anything like that. And that just helps move the sport, faster and get better.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to talk about your mental approach to competition. What habits or rituals do you employ which help you get primed for peak performance?
So I like to have a drink every now and again. And usually I like to start slowing down a little bit, especially when you're getting close to competition. Yeah. And so that's one thing. And trying to make sure that I keep like a little bit of that going on throughout the year. There were times throughout my military career where I did drink, and yeah, so as I started doing competitions, like that can be a hindrance. And so you just want to, step back from it. You don't have to stop, but that was one of the things that I found, was that, just being able to tell yourself, like, this isn't something that I have to do. Like, I can, I don't need that. And that was a thing that I liked about myself growing up, and everything was there's nothing that I ever needed. I used to smoke when I was younger, and yeah, I quit that cold turkey. There was just one day I was 27 years old, and I was like, oh, I'm done. And so yeah, that's one of those things, is like just making sure that I maintain that level of a relationship with alcohol, is making sure that it's not overcoming me.
Right, you like to have a good time with it, but you don't like to rely on it.
Right. Yeah. And at no point should I ever feel like, gosh, I just need that drink. And it's like that's one thing. It's just keeping that in check. And as far as everything else goes, a lot of people don't know that, I'm assuming that a lot of people don't know, but I was asked the other day, there was one of my friends, she's going to be a VFS video flyer. And so she was asking me what my pointers were. And that was, one of them was that a video guy actually has his own dirt dive. So, you can't just sit in one place when you leave the airplane. You have to move. And if you don't, you could block grips, and that's a bust. That's a video bust. And that's like every single time I hear video bust, it just drives me crazy. That's another one of those things where I'm like, God, I knew where I needed to be. And that sometimes you have this very small window to get that shot, and they can be rotating and they might over rotate, and you have to make that. You have to be able to get that, to get to the position that you need to be in to get that shot, to get that point. And if you don't, that's your fault. That's not their fault.
No, to imagine that requires a high degree of anticipation that's built over the course of the training year. Right? Absolutely.
And so like, as they're doing it, you're understanding what they're doing and how far you need to go. And you can see all of that as they're moving through the formation. You can actually see where they're going to go when you start doing it enough. And so that's when it like requires you to do your own dirt dive. And if you don't know what a dirt dive is, it's basically everything that you're going to do in the sky, you walk it on the ground. And so I'm getting all those visual references that I need to have to put myself in a position that I'm going to be able to get the shot no matter what. And
it's visualization and building in the muscle memory with, if you're walking around during the dirt dive, right?
Absolutely. And so as they're doing their dirt dive, I have my own dirt dive that I'm doing. And that's interesting because, when you're in the formation, it's kind of like everybody can talk to you about where you need to go. But as a video guy, there's nobody else. It's just you. And so it's like being out there, you're like, I think this is where I need to be. In the beginning, you're like, I think this is where I need to be. And then you go do the jump. You're like, that's definitely not where I need to be. And it's like, I got to be over here. And so it's like just accumulating all of that knowledge as you go through.
I would imagine that's a difficult balance to have as far as, trying to communicate enough with the team about what they're expecting of you or what they think will happen in a certain situation. But you also don't want to bug them too much, right? You want them to have the confidence that you're like, hey, I'm solid. I'm going to be good. But so I would imagine that's a, kind of delicate balance to maintain.
And the another thing is whenever you're doing that, you don't want to get too close, because if you get under them, you'll do what's called a burble. And so now you're creating this burble underneath them, and they're having to fly through your quote unquote dirty wind. Right. And so, now that messes with them, and that's another thing that you don't want to do. So being able to do all that without messing with them as well. And so, it's really fun.
Do you have a structured visualization process?
It all depends on the jump. And there are some jumps where I'm like, yep, this is where I get out, and this is just where I sit, and everything's going to be great. There are some jumps where I'm like, okay, I got to go right, got to go left, got to go right. And, it's just like kind of this back and forth deal of trying to get the shot. And it's funny because Jason Russell was the Golden Knights VFS coach. And I remember him going through every single person's job on the team. And it was like this drawn out thing of, you've got to do this and this is your responsibility and blah, blah, blah. And then he gets to me and he's like, GTFS. And I was like, GTFS. And he's like, get the F and shot. And I was like, okay. And then I was like waiting for more, and he's like, that's it. I was like, that's it? And he's like, yeah, that's all you got to do. He's like, just get the shot. And I was like, okay, I got it. And so, a lot of visualization goes into that. And so, and then on top of that, trying not to overdo that too much, because there's definitely like as you're moving to a target, like you have this broad scope of everything, and then it all kind of like focuses in right there at the end. And so you just want to make sure that you're not overdoing it, that you're seeing the big picture. And then as you get closer to it, you're just drawing it in and tightening up your shot group, if you will.
Yeah, you can get to a point of diminishing returns when it comes to visualization. Like sometimes I'll be on the plane and I can tell when I start to zone out a little bit. I'm like, okay, I need to take a little mental break because I'm just visualizing for the sake of visualizing, you know what I mean? So it's definitely a balance that you learn through experience over time, what works for you and what doesn't. And I think that's different for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any other things that you visualize or prepare for leading up to a competition? Like for myself, I'll go as far as visualizing, like when I get on competition site, I'll scope it out, get the lay of the land. I'll see where or I'll try to ask if it's not already set up, where the podium's going to be or where the awards are going to be. And I'll try to to picture that and recreate in my mind what it's like, get that feeling of what it's like to be, up on the podium. And do you go that far, or are you just pretty much focused on jump to jump?
I think I'm pretty much focused on the jump to jump. It's watching the team climb, or me climbing out and then watching the team climb out. And then just, focusing and trying to keep that rhythm of how the team works, because Steph does an amazing job with the count. And so it's always interesting whenever we switch it up and we have either Andy or Colin giving the count, because they have a different one. So I have to learn theirs as well. But the majority of the time we have Steph and she's doing it. And it's awesome working with them all, because they all have amazing attitudes, and they're just really fun people to be around, and we keep it light. And so yeah, there's some ribbing going on, and it's it was interesting when I first started with them, because there's a lot of similarities between them and the VFS team that I was on the Golden Knights, and so that kind of makes me smile. But yeah,
that's cool.
Pretty much, it's a watching them climb out and then like getting that timing for what they do, leaving the airplane, because it's imperative to get those points off the hill. And if you leave too early, you're missing shot, or you're missing grips, and that's points left on the table, and that's your fault. And so yeah, and it's visualizing that whole thing off the hill, and then the rest of the skydive, and then making sure everybody's gone away and that you're clear to pull your parachute.
Man, what a gift that is. I know it's been for me, and it sounds like it has been for you when you leave the team, or you leave an organization like, being with the Army, where you have a lot of camaraderie and you have that supportive, team environment. For a lot of people, when they leave that, they have this tremendous void, because that's not really there anymore. But you and I have been fortunate to be able to continue doing what we love doing with the people that we love doing it with, and being in that same kind of environment. So it's really cool. I'm glad that's working out for you the way it is. Now, there was a point in time where you had an injury, and I want to talk to you about dealing with setbacks, because it was a potential setback for you. And I know that anytime you have an injury, it can become, a difficult time psychologically. But if you can tell us some about your injury, what happened, and then how you dealt with it in order to be, fully prepared and ready to go for U.S. Nationals last year.
So yeah, at Summerfest, I broke my hand. And I'm going to say this in front of all the skydivers that are listening, but it was my first bone break ever. And it was a metatarsal? I might be messing that up, but basically the bone that's right under the pinky finger. That had broken. It broke on exit as I was leaving the airplane with this young lady. And my hand had actually dropped down onto her 3-ring system as we left the airplane in a sit, and it just broke. I honestly thought I dislocated my finger. And so I was like, well, that's something I'll worry about once I, get to the ground. It's whatever. And it didn't hurt as bad as I thought a broken bone would hurt. And so that's why I just thought it was a dislocated finger. And I was like, I'd probably get somebody to pop it right back in. But we did the rest of the skydive. I remember I threw the hang 10 twice during that skydive, and both times I was like, ow. I was like, why does it hurt? I was like, it's weird. Like, it feels funny. And then, yeah, I landed. And when I landed, I pulled down on the brakes to stop. And so when I pulled down on those steering lines, I remember feeling that pain again. And, you're stopping yourself, so you kind of forget it. But then once you're safe on the ground, I was like, why did that hurt? And I had looked at my hand throughout the skydive, and my hand looked normal, even under canopy. And once I got on the ground, that's when it swelled up. And I remember running inside, and I'd like held my hand up in front of J. Russ, and he just kind of like looked at me and with this like stoic look, and was just like, all right, we'll see you in 6 weeks.
Oh man.
And I was like, man, and that's how much we had, it was, what was it? That was August 1st was when I broke it. And that was almost, was it 6 weeks? Yeah, it was 6 weeks from that moment
till U.S.
Nationals. Yeah. And so yeah, I came back, had some issues getting with the doctor, but fortunately, I'd found somebody that could help me, and they ended up getting me to an ortho. And once I got there, he knew the deal, and he was like, hey man, he's like, we're going to get you back in the sky. And I was like, all right. And I had messaged my girlfriend, Anna, and I was like, hey, I broke my hand. And she was like, okay. And then, she didn't give me any kind of like I don't want to say she didn't give me warm, fuzzy feelings, but she immediately went into how do we get you good again? And so, and there was a lot that went into that. I stopped drinking almost immediately.
Just to help to speed up your recovery.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, that was one thing. It just went away right then. And then, yeah, it was just like focusing on diet, focusing on keeping it good to go and not overusing it. But at the same time, the doc was just giving me progress reports every week, and I never went into a cast, fortunately. And I remember like he put me in the brace, and I remember like I almost doubted it. And then he was like, he's like, no, he's like, it's going to turn out okay. I was like, all right. He's like, you're going to be ready for nationals.
That's awesome.
And I was like, okay. I was like, cool. And he was like, you're going to be good. And, 2 days before nationals, that brace came off. And, it was just a lot of making sure that it was okay. That I had a scare. I had gone out, I was DDing actually for somebody, and we had gone out to a bar, and, so there I was, chilling, watching all my friends drink. And I was like, cool. And they asked us to play guitar on the stage. And so I went up there, and my buddy was playing and I wasn't. And so I'm singing, and we got down, and this guy came up to me. He's like, dude, that was awesome. I was like, thanks. And he's like, it was so nice to meet you. And he like stuck his hand out, and when he did, he grabbed my hand and he just squeezed it. And I was like, oh, and I heard a pop, and I remember thinking, I was like, that was it. I was like, that's probably nationals for me. And I was like, it's all because I did this. And fortunately, that's not the way it went. I went back, I told the doc about it, and he was like, all right, let's get a look at it. And I was like, okay. And he was like, yeah. He's like, stop shaking hands. And I was like, you got it. And so, yeah, it got really awkward after that. People going for a handshake. I'm like, let's dab it up. I'm like, how you doing, buddy? And so yeah. Babying my hand after that was definitely a thing.
Were there any points where did you maintain a positive attitude through the recovery process, or were there any points where, you're doubting if things were going to shake out the way you wanted? And how did you deal with that? Yeah,
for that 48 hours, because I wouldn't go see the doc immediately. It happened like on a Friday or Saturday night, and I don't think I was going to see the doctor until like that next Tuesday or Wednesday. And so there was those couple of days where I was just like sitting there, and I'm like, God, I hope that guy didn't mess my hand up and like it's got to restart or whatever. Because I was honestly like just thinking about bones breaking my entire life. Like I always thought it was going to be so much worse, and hopefully it doesn't ever happen again. But it was actually extremely mild. Like I was laughing when I was walking off the drop zone and walked into the thing, and they were like, you have a broken hand. And I was like, yeah. They're like, are you okay? And I was like, I mean, I'm okay up here in my head, but I know my hand isn't. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it was, besides that, like everything else was great. Yeah.
So if it was 2 days before nationals, then you didn't do any training with the team, from the time that you got injured until you went to nationals. Correct. Essentially. Wow. Right.
So and then pretty much it was like, all right. And I had asked them if they would, have somebody on standby just in case.
An alternate.
Right. And, but fortunately my, even with the brace on, like the position that it was in would have allowed me to hold on to the airplane. Mm. And so yeah, I felt confident that I could have done it with the brace. But they said I didn't need it anymore.
And you felt confident about, deployment and everything, like that wasn't going to be a safety issue or anything. But.
And, I was actually practicing, during that last week, just getting used to put my hand back there with those, because 2 of my fingers were basically taped together, and then I got the other 3, and I would practice like reaching back and grabbing with the other 3 fingers and pulling, and yeah, it was no issues. And then we went up there and we did our first training jump, which was the couple training jumps that you do right up into nationals, and yeah, we left.
Did you feel like you were shaking off any rust, or did you feel like you just jumped right back into it?
I felt like I jumped right back into it. Awesome. And nice. The other thing, little promo for Vertical, we had just ordered suits, and my suit had came in. And so it would also be the first time that I was flying that, and it was amazing.
Oh, that's cool. Whenever that works out and you get a perfect fit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, that's great. That's the best.
Man, I put that thing on, and I felt like I was in a Ferrari. I was all over the sky, like just being exactly where I wanted to be. And it felt good.
That's awesome. Yeah. If you can talk about your competition experience there with SDC Core at Nationals, what was that like for you?
Yeah. It was, honestly, I was a little bit more focused on my hand. But yeah, for the most part, like, it was basically like another training day. Just, that the pace was a little bit different, but even then, like, we had dealt with weather. So we would have to sit down for a little bit, or, they have their rotations out at Skydive Chicago, and depending on the tandems or what have you, what might be going on, an event might be going on or something. And so then you kind of got to step back a little bit. And I was really appreciative of that, because that gives you that little bit of downtime that you are going to have during competitions, because you have to have anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour in between each load, and you're doing 10 jumps. And so it was, it felt pretty good. It felt like we were doing, just another training day. And so, it was, I just felt good to be back with them. And then, like I said, putting on that suit, it was, I felt extremely confident once we went into the competition.
And then how did it feel being up on the podium with the gold medal around your neck?
There I was once again, with my friends, and, that's all what we want. And it's funny, cause, I've heard Jason Russell say this, that, that's the 5 seconds, that you get. And it's like, and then while you're up there, it's like, you just kind of reflect on everything that's led up to there. And you see, all the jokes, all the smiles, all the, what it took to get there. And then there you are with your arms around your friends, and everybody's smiling, people are clapping, and photos are getting taken, and, and then there you are, a US champion, and it's pretty surreal, but yeah, it felt good.
That's amazing, man. I'm glad to see that it all worked out for you in grand fashion. That's awesome. So we kind of jumped ahead of ourselves as far as talking about your retirement, your post-retirement stuff from the military. How many years did you end up serving?
It was 22 years and, almost 8 months. 7 or 8 months, yeah.
And then you've been extremely busy. Your other interests that we've kind of touched on, acting, music. You're an incredible guitarist and singer. You're into gaming too. And you also do, which you've been doing for a number of years now, I believe, some jumping with the all veterans group parachute team, which does demonstrations. I'll let you, get into that a little bit if you want to. And then you just started talking about breakdancing. And I can remember one of my early memories of you was at one of the Golden Night reunion / Christmas parties. And I just remember I was amazed at your skills on the dance floor for that event. So you're getting back into that. Super cool. But if you can, let's start off with the acting and talk about some of that. How you got in that? Yeah, just tell us all about that. That's amazing.
So in 2014, I was going through my second divorce, and I like to say it's kind of like I put myself in a cocoon. It was a couple dark months of just me just going home, and kind of just like I felt like I had been doing this thing over and over again, and I wasn't chasing after what I wanted to be chasing after. And I was like, what am I truly chasing after here? And then also I was 6 years from what I thought I was going to be retiring, which was 20 years. And so I was like, what am I going to do when I get out? What am I going to do when I grow up? And there was a lot of back and forth. I was like, I could go back and be a cop. And like, oh, but you're retiring, maybe who knows what your body's going to be like in 6 years? Like, are you going to be able to keep up? I thought I wanted to be on a SWAT team or something like that. And I was like, maybe I could be a firefighter. It's like, I don't know, and there was a lot of I don't knows and back and forths, and maybe you could go be a doctor, or something like that, or maybe a lawyer, all the big stuff that people want to be to try to help people. And in the end, I was like, I would like to inspire people through what I do, and that answer honestly wouldn't come until later. But I decided I could do all of it by being an actor. Like, you you could go around and, spend a little bit of time, questioning people or if you could get into some of those spaces where those people exist and kind of learn what they do, not to become what they do, but to be able to portray what they do and possibly inspire people. And I remember I went to a Meisner workshop, which is a form of acting or a method of acting. And it was like just being able to remove all the social norms that you have, so that you can, put yourself in these positions to act accordingly. Like there's, let's say there's a couple and they've been together for 15 years, now here you are as an actor meeting the other actress, and you guys have to make it look like you've been, together for 15 years. How do you do that? And, however much time that you have, which isn't going to be 15 years, it's going to be a couple months probably at best. And so it's like, being able to break down all those walls to be able to let yourself become that person. And so there I was at the workshop, and one of the questions they asked there was, what is the reason that you want to be an actor? And they were like, it can be any reason, whether it's fame, money, maybe, you come from a line of actors, or, you were a theater kid in high school and you're chasing that dream. And it kind of drove me back to that, watching those little kids and the wide eyes and everything else. And like, I can be an inspiration to people. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to inspire people. And I learned later on that sometimes that if it was a STEM awards ceremony that was happening in LA, and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is what it was. And pretty much what they were doing was it was an award ceremony for celebrities that helped these jobs through acting. And so it's like CSI started putting females as their characters, and they saw an influx of females in that particular arena, like while those shows were going on. They were inspirations to these people that were joining these, or to the females that were joining that occupation. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to inspire people to do stuff, whether it's I help a TV show or whatever by being the bum that sits on the side of the road, or, I'm the main character. Like I want to inspire people. I want to work on a project that's going to help people get to their next step. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I went. And that all happened in 2015. And, when I came out of that dark place and was like, I'm going to be an actor. And so I was headed down to, Homestead, Florida, where the Golden Knights do their annual training. And on the way down, I stopped in Spartanburg, South Carolina. There was a place there called T3 Talent. And they were having a class. And I was like, it's an acting class. Cool. I'll go do that. And so I went to it and read some lines for them. No experience. And they were like, hey, we kind of dig your look and we like the way you read those lines. Like, we can help you get set up. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I was kind of awkward at first. And they're like, well, we don't make money unless you do. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. So they were like, and if they're like, we know you're in the Army. So if what we need to do is wait, then we'll wait. And we'll just send you acting classes when you can. I was like, okay. And so that's pretty much what I did for the first, or all the way up until I retired. It kind of stopped throughout COVID. And then it kind of lagged a little bit. There was also a change of the guard, if you will, STISA Talent Agency, which is the name actually comes from the two owners, which is Steve and Lisa Lopez. They're from New York. They came down to Spartanburg and they took over T3 Talent. And so now it's called STISA Talent Agency.
Is Spartanburg, is that turning into a hotspot of sorts for acting or productions? I believe it is.
I know that they're trying to build some studios down there so that they can get some LA folks over to kind of oversee some stuff and maybe, who knows, become the next Eastern Hollywood, and as Atlanta has. And yeah, it's been fun working with them.
What kind of parts have you gotten that have stemmed from that?
So I did a short film that I landed with them, and it was it was a showing at a mega church, I believe, in Atlanta. And so I got to play the role of a dad for a young lady who was basically trying to be resilient. And so, yeah. And, that was interesting because it's like, it's all kid friendly. So you got to be a little bit cheesy in there. And I actually had to put on a cheese head and, kind of give one of those, hey kid, you're doing great. One of those kinds of things, but it was a lot of fun. And then just working with Stisa, it's been awesome. Just because every time I leave there, I just feel like, man, this is where I belong. And there's times where, I go on these trips. I just went on a trip, last year. I was gone for like 3 months. I wasn't, east of the Mississippi for 3 whole months. And then, being stationed in Fort Bragg, that was kind of weird. And so, yeah, it was incredible to just that feeling that I get every single time I leave. I'm like, man, this is what I need to be doing. Mm-hmm. This is where I belong. I just love it.
Feels right.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I just love the way I feel. And I actually had an audition yesterday, and I went down there and yeah, I left the audition room, and I don't know if I'm going to get the role or not. I really hope I do, but it's it's just that feeling I left. I'm like, man, yeah, this is what I want to be doing. I love doing it.
What is it for? Is it anything you can talk about, or?
I don't even know if they didn't say anything, so I don't want to say something maybe I shouldn't, but
yeah, no worries.
Just know you might see me on TV.
It's definitely a cool thing to do. I did a lot of acting when I was, you talked about, being a theater kid in school or whatever, and was able to do a couple of, medium scale productions with the Cape Fear Regional Theater and the Fort Bragg Playhouse at the time, and some things like that, some musicals. That's awesome. and I really enjoyed it.
I didn't even know that.
I got out of it once, once I got on the team and started doing that. My focus shifted to skydiving, but it's been very fortunate to, over the years, have been able to get on some really big productions like Transformers 2, where we get to jump in, then we get to run around as some extras after, and got to work with Peter Berg on like a big scale Army commercial production that never really saw the light of day, but it was cool, just like 300 extras out there. And a couple of other things like that, Cutaway, so it's always been cool. It's kind of been a dream of mine from the sidelines that I've never been super focused on since I started skydiving. But, it's inspired by you. I'm like, man, maybe I should go, try out for something again. That'd be
absolutely
fun.
Yeah. I remember seeing you in Cutaway actually. And I was like, that's Matt Davidson. I know that guy.
And now let's move on to music, man. It's, yeah, you're an incredible guitarist and a great singer, and I'll tell you what, for whenever I go to hear you play out at PK's, out at the Paraclete XP Drop Zone in Rayford, North Carolina, PK's Pub and Grill, it's just such an incredible. I have a great time every time, and it's because you bring the vibes, and especially when you and Mike Cook. Yeah. Were together, man. You guys there was a magical time there when you guys were together that while it was happening, I was like, this is something that's really, really special. And I think after, when you've been around those kinds of parties for, as a DJ, I get to experience a bunch of that. But, once you hit so many of them over the years, I think you start to recognize the really, really special ones. And to me, that was a really, really special one. But how did you get into playing guitar?
So as I said before, I started singing in high school. Guitar, I had tried to do it so many times growing up. My grandfather was a guitarist. My uncle is a guitarist. And they both played for fun. Honestly, I remember my grandfather playing, but it really didn't hit me until I started playing that he had played. And, it all started on an airplane coming back from a show on the Golden Knights. And Mike Cook was the team leader of the team at that time, and he had bought a guitar. We were down in Austin, Texas, and we were coming back, and he was playing, and he had this like little amp that he had plugged into the guitar, and he was listening through his headphones because the airplane's really loud. And so he's over there just strumming on it, and I had a splitter, and I was like, curious, and so I was like, hey man, can I plug my splitter in, and I got a set of headphones, we can both sit here and listen to you jam. He's like, for sure. So we hooked it up, and he started playing. Well, as he was playing, I'd kind of like, I was sitting there kind of bebopping and turned my head and would sing a little bit, towards the back of the airplane away from him. Right. And I thought the airplane was loud enough. Well, we land and he goes, "You're going to learn how to play guitar." And I was like, "Absolutely not, man. I got sausage fingers, bro. Like, no, like, have you seen these things? Like, I push all the strings. Like, no, that's not happening." And he's like, "Ace, you're going to learn." And I was like, "Man, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is for me." And he was like, I got this guitar. I'm going to restring it and you're going to learn." He's like, "Well, just, whatever. We're just going to have fun with it." I was like, "Okay." And so we started out, kind of ABCs, going through chords, and, ended up getting up to learning how to play Mary Jane's Last Dance and then Nutshell, which are a couple songs that I still like to play a lot. And after that, I jumped on this guitar app and basically just taught myself as much as I could while Mike was just kind of helping me out here and there.
What app was that?
What's that?
What app?
Oh, it's Ultimate Guitar. And so, yeah, I paid for whatever subscription they had, and it tells you where you need to put your fingers, and, I'd look up whatever song I wanted to and just learn the songs as I went. And there was a lot of times where in the beginning where I was just sitting there, not learning any songs and just literally going chord to chord, like getting the formations of my fingers down on the fretboard. And I like hours long of me just sitting in the living room, just, working with beats, because it was an acoustic guitar that I was playing with initially. And so you can kind of get a little bit of a rhythm going there with that. And so that's what I did, is just sit there for hours and just work going, play a little rhythm with one chord and then go to another chord and just keep working back and forth. And then learning songs, you start learning stuff like hammers and pull offs and stuff like that, or hammer-ons and pull offs. And just watching other guitarists and learning how they play their solos, or learning how they play the song, and which chord to use, whether you're way high up on the fret or whether you're going down low, and using bar chords. That was another thing.
That's the most difficult for me. I'm trying to learn those now, and it's kicking my ass.
and yeah, it was just having that mindset, that I want to learn this. I want to play this song. I want to play this solo, and there's still some things out there that I'm still chasing. I still want to play Johnny Be Good. I still want to learn November Rain, the solo to November Rain. And, but yeah.
You have any pointers for learning to sing while you play guitar? Cause that's another thing that I've really struggled with. So
people are really going to laugh at this. I learned how to do that by playing Rock Band, the video game. When I got sent to Fort Bragg, I was all by myself. And so, my kids were all back at home. And so while I was here, all I had was I'd go to work. And when I got done, I'd come home and I'd play Rock Band, and I could sing. And so, and I knew this. And so I'd start singing into the microphone, and I was like, well, I'm just singing. Like, this is kind of boring, just singing all by myself. And so I'd pick up that guitar and start, clicking the buttons. And I did that, doing that. I did it playing drums. And I think that's where it really pushed me, was playing the drums and singing at the same time, kind of finding your rhythm while you're playing the drums, and then understanding where that rhythm is going ahead of time. And then after that, then you're singing. And it's kind of like, as long as you're able to do one without really having to think about it, then you can do the other, focus on the other.
Okay.
And so, you have your easy songs, and then you have your songs where you have to slow it down really slow, so that you can get exactly where you need to start singing. Because sometimes it's just weird.
Gotcha. Yeah. I remember a couple times where, Mike's been like, "Hey Matt, come on up and, play a little bit or something, so I'll struggle and, strum along, and then, feeling awkward already. And then he's like, "Sing." I'm like, not happening, man. Sorry. Yeah, I'm like, I just shook my head. Like, nope, not ready for that one yet.
But yeah, as far as pointers go, I would say, you gotta, I would say slow it down, which is hard to do because you have, all these songs and they're all played. And so trying to find a way to slow the song down. And ultimately, if you can learn the song one way or the other, and then after that, then you take the other thing that you're learning and slow that down. And then, yeah.
Cool. I'll try to, I'll definitely try that out. Thanks. So you're also doing gaming. How'd you get into gaming? Like, I don't know much about that world, and like, you're on Twitch and everything. And yeah, if you could just talk about that and how you got into it?
I've always loved gaming. It's something that I liked as a child, and just growing up, video games were always cool to me. And I remember there was one time, it was kind of like did you ever see that movie, The Wiz? Mm-hmm. It was one of those moments where it's like, you can be in this competition. And it was another one of those learning moments where I was like, my mom, I remember her being like, you can go. And it was nothing big. It was like out in front of, I think it was a Walmart, where they were having this video game competition to see how far they could get through whatever video game. And back then, they didn't have memory. And so you just ran through the level, and it was however far you could get on the lives that you had. And so I said no. I got really nervous, and I was like, no. And so, after going through everything with the Golden Knights and finding my confidence and everything else, I was like, I'm doing the acting thing. I'm doing the music thing. What am I doing on the in-between? And it's like, I have to keep myself in front of people, so that I can maintain this, because on the Golden Knights, that was always a thing. Like, you're always in front of somebody, whether you're at a competition and you're talking to people, or you're at an air show and you're talking to the American public. You're always in front of people. And I was like, how do I keep myself in front of people?
And is that because you think it's a perishable skill, or just to keep yourself warmed up and, just make sure you're not digressing any?
Both, honestly. Yeah. I'm sure if you spend any time away from it, the nerves can kick back in.
No, for sure. It's been a while since I've done the last podcast, with Mr. Breeden. So anytime it's been, a good amount of time beforehand, I'm like, can I do this? So I understand that for sure. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just, it's trying to stay in front of people, trying to keep myself open to the possibility that I am going to mess up at some point. How do I recover from that? How do I keep myself with the level head, especially for the games that I play? They're all person versus person, or player versus player, PvP. And so, yeah, you get into these instances where you're playing against another person and it's a competition. And so, and then on top of that, I have a chat where people are talking to me, and sometimes they're talking to mess to me, and they're talking to me about, oh, dude, what are you doing, Unk? What are you doing out here, bro? And I'm just like, dude, I'm having fun like you are. Yeah, right. Go do something else, boomer, or whatever. And they're talking to mess to me. Sometimes people get on there and they're like, dude, thank you. I've had people message me, asking me about life advice. And I'm just like, bro, I don't know if I'm the guy to ask, but here's my positive, way that I think about that, mm-hmm. and how I would get through it. And some people have messaged me back, and they broke up with their girlfriend or something. They're like, how do I get through that? And I'm like, dude, I've been divorced twice. Just take your time. Realize what you got to do for you, and, whatever you can, reconcile from that. If not, then, you just got to push on. But no matter what, you have to push on, and finding your drive. And so it's been fun, streaming and gaming. Unfortunately, it looks like the TikTok app is going away, but I've accumulated for over 4,300 people following me on there. Wow. And then I've kind of let my other social media slip, but I have a feeling I'm about to start pushing those. Twitch is somewhere around 200 people. And so, yeah, it's been fun just being able to talk to people. And on top of that, they're kids, and kids don't have filter, especially when they got there's a computer screen in front of them. They can say whatever they want to.
Right.
And so, yeah. And sometimes I get people on there, and, there was a guy actually out in San Diego, his name's Cam. He runs a sandwich shop called Carnivore Sandwich, and amazing sandwiches, by the way. So if you're ever out in San Diego downtown, definitely go there. Tell him I sent you.
Check it out.
And, but yeah, I remember him coming on there and being like, "Oh, dude, it's another dad playing, this game Rust." And I was like, "Hey, what's going on, man?" And we just he jump on there every now and, "Hey, man, I'm just checking in on the dad playing the video game." I'm like, "Yeah, man." And yeah, and I've got a couple people on there that jump on the Discord app, and that's kind of where we talk. So if I have a team, that's where I talk to that team. And yeah, and so I've made a few friends on there actually, and we all plan stuff and try to get people to jump into these places, and then they jump and they're like, "Oh yeah, I had a great time on your server," or whatever. And I'm like, "That's cool, man. I'm glad you had a good time." And
nice. That's awesome. And where can people find you?
So I am Nomadic Texan. Depending on the app, it might be a dot or an underscore. And it's spelled N0MADIC, and it's either dot or underscore and then Texan.
That's cool. So yeah, any gamers that are out there that might want to follow you now after listening to this.
Oh yeah, please do.
Where you'll find them.
Yeah.
Wanted to, we're almost done, but I appreciate your time. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I would like to talk about, at first I'd like to go back to the music thing because you were talking about interacting with people and you said something about, slipping on certain social media platforms, but I just want to go back and I want to, publicly thank you for during the pandemic when you were playing your music and you're singing and, putting that out on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. It was such a wonderful and refreshing, thing, like, in a time where there's a lot of darkness, it was cool to see your smiling face on there and just, belting out some tunes, getting people involved. And that was a super cool thing, out of that, I think that was, finding just a positive, in that whole dark situation, but
thanks.
That was super cool. Yeah. What, inspired you to do that?
Mark Owens.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mark the Shark.
Mark the Shark.
Yeah. He was playing guitar and he knew that I played. And so the pandemic happened. He's like, hey, man, you got to jump on social media, man. You got to get ahead of it. You could be playing right now live and people are going to love it. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I was still trying to find my way through the guitar. And I was like, I don't know if I'm that brave. And so I think I had played in front of people a couple times, but not really much. And so yeah, Mark just kept on and kept on. He kept hounding me about it. And I was like, I don't know, man. And I feel really bad because I need to go play with him. And I'm going to go play with you, Mark, I promise. But yeah, he just kept on. And like once a week or so, he was like, Ace, where you at? Facebook's calling. Where you at? And so I was like, all right, fine. And I was like, you know what? Whenever they say we can, whenever it's looking like we can go back, I'll do it. And he was like, all right. And then they were like, yeah, we're looking like we're going to open stuff back up. And, however long of a time that we had when that notice came out. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, that's a couple weeks from now. So let me go ahead and do it. And so I started playing on Fridays and like people were showing up. And I was like, man, and that when they said we could go back, it wasn't like it was like an all out, everybody was back to work. Like,
right.
Like it was still, there was still a lot of
trickle.
Right. And so every Friday after that I was playing and people were showing up and I was like, this is cool. And the thing that I liked about that so much was like, I'd get done with the Friday, I'd give myself Saturday and then Sunday I was like, all right, I'd have to make up a new list. And I was only playing for like an hour or so. And so it was like, okay, here are all the songs that I'm playing. And I tried not to play the same songs over and over again. And so it was like that whole week, all the way up until Friday, I was just like, okay, got to make it through the song. And then I'd, every day I'd take a couple songs and I'd play them. And then next day I'd switch over to another couple songs. And then Thursday would come around and I'd try to play the whole set list a couple times. And
would you credit that pressure to making your level of playing, get better in maybe a shortened timeline?
Oh yeah, for sure. That helped out a lot. Absolutely. And then also, it was kind of weird. And I still think it's weird because it keeps on happening, but it was like different things and different songs were happening. Like I'd learn a new chord and then I'd see that chord over and over again. And so it's almost like it reinforced itself. And I'm like, oh, there's that chord again. Like, that's cool. Like I just learned a D minor chord. Like that's awesome. Or I just, I learned A minor, I learned a A7 and, all the different A versions that they have and the different sounds that it created. Like there's Beatles songs out there that have like 3 different C's like back to back and just learning all of those. And so, yeah, just learning all those nuances to the guitar was awesome. And so even though I am self-taught, like I just feel it was serendipitous that all of it just kept happening like that.
Yeah. And then, would you credit that to, having built up your fan base a bit during that kind of downtime to the times that you started, doing performances at venues, where you had a bigger following then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. People come up to me still and that only saw me on Facebook and they're like, are you still playing guitar? I'm like, yeah. They're like, dude, you were rocking and rolling. I bet you're doing great now. I'm like, I'm having a good time. Like, and that essentially that's what it is. It's all about having a good time.
And then, what was it? See You Next Tuesday came out of that. If you could talk about that a little bit.
So So initially I started playing out at PK's on Fridays all by myself. And Mike ended up working there. And he's like, hey, man, what do you think? Tuesdays, I forget why we started playing on Tuesdays, but he was like, let's play on Tuesdays. He's like, would you be okay with that? And he's like, we'll play 6 to 9. It's a school night. We don't push it too late. And then, yeah, we just have some fun. Like, we'll just have fun. We'll play these songs. And I was like, yeah. And so I was sitting there, and ultimately what I wanted to do was try to come up with a way to have not only Mike and I play, but if there was other people that could play, such as yourself, or any of the other patrons out there, I wanted it like to kind of be like I want to get up there and I want to play as well. And I just wanted it to be free flowing. And ultimately it's like people were watching as I was posting videos about it on Facebook, and they were like, hey man, like I want to come play with you. I was like, that's the whole point. Like, come out, come play. And so, yeah, then all of a sudden, drummers came in, and other guitarists and bassists. Now I have Steve Hubbard, who used to be part of the USPA. He's a bassist now. And so, yeah. And we
get Max out there too, who's more of a permanent fixture, right?
Yep. Max, honestly, he was kind of the replacement for Mike. I remember Mike kind of coming up to me. He's like, hey man, I'm leaving. And I was like, yeah, like sucks. And he's like, what do you think about Max playing? I was like, dude, we're having a great time. I was like, as long as we keep having a good time, that's all I care about. Like, right. Like I just want to have a good time, play music, have a good time, sit there and watch my friends laugh and act up and sing along. And
that's awesome. And if you're ever out there on a Tuesday when you're playing, come on out and listen, be part of it. It's such a cool experience. It's just everybody at the bar is super great. Everybody that works there, it's just a really cool environment, to be in. It's kind of a magical place. I've looked at, I've been around Rayford and PKs for a good number of years now. And, you see it kind of go in waves, and this has been a good extended time period where there've been some great people, working there, and the whole vibe's just, really cool. And it's just a fun place to be, but people should check to make sure you're in town, right? To make sure that something's going on.
Absolutely.
On Tuesday night there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, being an actor requires me to almost be on call all the time. Like I said, you get an audition notice, and then all of a sudden, there I was on Wednesday, and usually I hang out with Anna and her son Gunnar. And I got the call, and I'm like, I gotta go. And so it's like, I'm out, and that could happen at any time. And especially when I'm back, I don't really reserve any of that time off, for myself. I do if like there's family things going on, or if like I have skydiving events that are going on, I definitely put in my time for that. But like just the rest of the time, I kind of try to leave myself open. And, speaking of the name, See You Next Tuesday, my roommate, Manny, who is an awesome skydiver / tunnel instructor.
He is awesome.
Yeah.
Big, friendly giant.
Yeah. He came in and kind of gave me he was messing with me, and he's like, yeah, you're good. See you next Tuesday. And I was like, what? He's like, you're good, good. See you, capital N next, capital T, Tuesday, take the hint. Like, that's the way Australians talk. And I was like, that's cool. And then I was like, dude, we play on Tuesdays. I was like, so it could be see you next Tuesday. That way, if people don't come, see you next Tuesday. And so, yeah. And then we made shirts, and people love those. And so, yeah, there's a handful of people out there. We need to make some more shirts. But
nice. Yeah, those are cool shirts. I like those. And now I'd like to talk about, since we're on the entertainment subject, maybe we can talk a bit about the breakdancing. How are you getting back? I don't know anything about this. So yeah, I'm curious to hear.
So this year, my big thing was consistency. I've realized that's probably one of my biggest setbacks. You got to look at yourself and see where your faults are. And one of my big problems is I'm not consistent. And so whether that be like working out or maintaining some kind of schedule, like I've kind of been all over the place with all of the things that I do. And so,
as artists typically tend to be, myself included. Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so this year is like, I really want to carve out some time to kind of getting back into the flow of breakdancing and, or the art of breakdancing, whether that be, pop locking or floor work or doing power moves or, any of the other things.
Are you doing this for any kind of competition or performance that you're planning on, or are you just doing it for like, self-satisfaction?
Yeah, just for self-satisfaction to kind of tell myself, hey, you still got it, old guy. As much as I don't like to call myself old, I've been called old a lot in the last couple of years. So.
Oh yeah, I'm getting it too, man. I guess it's bound to happen eventually. But yeah, that's awesome, man. That's great to hear. Now I'd like to talk about your experiences and your time with the All Veterans Group Parachute Team.
Oh yeah, they're kind of the second home from the Golden Knights. You go into the Golden Knights, and there's sometimes people leave that organization, and it's kind of like they hang up the parachute and they're done. And when I initially started skydiving, I was like, I'm gonna do this forever. Like, I don't know if I cannot do this. And it's like a thing throughout the season, like especially right now because it's wintertime. And so, you're not as apt to go out and jump when it's 30 degrees on the ground. And so that hurts. And so, yeah, I was like, how do I keep that? And fortunately, Mike Elliott kind of gave us that outlet, and I'm super appreciative of him. And all the experiences that he gave me, especially when it comes to like, I remember doing my first air show with them, and we got out there and we did the demo, and like, it was awesome. We landed and we come in and we're there with our parachutes. And it kind of reminded me of the first time I ever went to Dubuque, Iowa, where we landed. It was a night show, and this was a night show as well. And as soon as we landed, it's like they just dropped the gates and people just walked right up to us. And so we landed and walked right through the gates, and it's like people were just there welcoming. And then the Blue Angels were there, and so they came through afterwards, and we're chatting with them, and their band comes out and plays, and it was just a good time. And hanging out with everybody and just having that camaraderie again of the air show. And it reminded me of my first year on Black Team, and I was just like, man, that was amazing.
That's awesome.
And so I was like, this is where I belong. And so, yeah, and I've had a lot of good times. I love going back to Texas. Texas is my home. And so yeah, going back there, and doing all the jumps with them, I actually got to do some of the tandems, into the bush, into College Station.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, I took Walker Bush, and there it goes again. Another young fella. It was Ashley Bush's husband, and I'm sorry if I forgot your name as well, but I know I'll remember it as soon as we walk away from this.
That's how it happens.
But yeah, jumping with those guys, it was awesome. And then hanging out with the Bush family afterwards. We jumped they had a concert out there as well after that day, or later on that evening, and we did a demo into it. And so that whole thing was awesome. And then hanging out with them, and yeah, that's something I won't ever forget. And just the warmth of being in Texas, being in my home state around fellow Texans, and then them being like, yeah, man. And I'm like, yeah, it was just such a good time.
Yeah, it's cool. It's obvious that, that was the case, because, just talking about it, you're becoming more animated, and, you get this huge smile across your face. So that's super cool. Yeah. I really enjoyed talking to Mike Elliott. He was on the podcast a while back and talking about some of his experiences that he's had from, jumping in George Bush Sr. and, just some of the funny stories that he's got about the Bush family, and being up in Maine there on the family's property. And it's just, some amazing stories. Mike's, man, he's done some amazing things with that team, and it's I'm really looking forward to. I was talking to Mark Jones not too long ago, and he was like, "Yeah, you should come out." And
yeah,
I think I'll be slowing down this year as far as the some of the competition stuff goes with the 8-way team. Mm-hmm. That's the plan anyway, and if that happens, then I'd definitely like to get out there and maybe do a couple shows.
That'd be great to be jumping in with you guys. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Well, brother, if you don't have anything else to add, I really appreciate you having, being on the podcast and getting to have this conversation with you. I've learned a lot about you that I didn't know beforehand, and I can say that to me, you're an inspiration in many ways, and I'm sure you are to countless, other people that are out there. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. I really appreciate you.
Thanks. I appreciate that.